Chapter 336, Appearance of the Martial Order Medallion. According to his eunuch, Wang Danian, Wei Chengping had muttered Ling Tian's name a full 117 times. That didn't even include the dozens of times when Wei Chengping's mumblings were incoherent. It could easily be seen just how frightened Wei Chengping was of Ling Tian. Slaughtering 1,000 soldiers with his whole body drenched in his enemy's blood, with overflowing bloodlust and killing intent bursting out from his eyes. Even from 1,000 feet away, Wei Chengping had felt his heart turn cold. Especially when those bloodthirsty eyes looked at him and said, "Wei Chengping, surrender your life." It was like King Yama giving him the proclamation of death. As Ling Tian charged towards him, heads were decapitated all around with blood coloring the skies red. Despite Wei Chengping escaping on his horse, Ling Tian's attack still cut through the air and decapitated 4 of his personal guards. Even after piercing through the flesh of his 4 guards, the remaining strength of the attack was still powerful enough to slice his warhorse in 2. Up until now, Wei Chengping still felt the lingering fear from the might of Ling Tian's attack, as though he doubted if he was even still alive. Up until now, Wei Chengping could still feel a bone-chilling cold coming from beneath his crotch. How could he not be afraid? The moment he closed his eyes, he would imagine Ling Tian standing in front of him, staring at him with those bloodthirsty eyes. It was already the 4th day when Wei Chengping finally regained his senses. This made all the imperial doctors who were attending to him give a sigh of relief. If anything were to happen to the crown prince while they were attending to him, all of their families and themselves would probably be buried alongside the crown prince. To think that this crown prince would suffer a nervous breakdown from just a single trip to the battlefield. How ridiculous was that? Where is young noble Shui? Once Wei Chengping got up, he no longer felt the chilly feeling at his crotch but a warm feeling instead. Thus, he was immediately energized, and he immediately asked about Shui Qianhuan. "Is he back yet? Summon him here. I have something to discuss with him." Everyone was at a loss and looked at each other. One imperial guard plucked up his courage to take a step forward. Reporting to the crown prince, "Young noble Shui disappeared after the battle and we have not seen him since then. He probably..." While the guard did not finish his sentence, everyone knew what he was meant. Shui Qianhuan had probably died on the battlefield. A crazed look was then seen in Wei Chengping's eyes as his breathing became erratic. Wei Chengping could clearly remember that Shui Qianhuan had escaped with his guards without even turning back to spare him a glance. With Shui Qianhuan's martial arts, how would he die in the battle? To think that Shui Qianhuan did not even bother to turn back when he pleaded for aid. It was obvious that Shui Qianhuan and the Shui family felt that the Northern Wei Empire no longer had any value and they had decided to abandon Wei Chengping. To Shui Qianhuan, a Wei Chengping without his 400,000 men army was probably no different from trash. At the same time, Wei Chengping also thought angrily to himself, "If not for your persuasion, would I have sent out my army? Now that our army has been defeated, you actually just walked away without cleaning up your mess." The more Wei Chengping thought about the matter, the more enraged he became. He then let out a sudden roar, "Shui Qianhuan! Shui family! You bunch of cowardly bastards!" After which, he suddenly felt his head aching, and he began to clench his teeth in pain. The same guard then said, "Crown Prince, Your Highness, please change into a set of clean undergarments first." In anger, Wei Chengping shouted in retort, "Why do I have to change my undergarments? This crown prince is doing great. All of you scram." As though they had been spared from torture, all the guards quickly fled. Wei Chengping suddenly felt as though something was wrong as he felt the warmth by his crotch suddenly turning cold. Only then did he realize that he was seated in a small puddle of water, and the warm feeling was. Feeling humiliated, Wei Chengping grew even crazier as an idea flashed in his head. Wei Chengping then began to laugh out in a maniacal and malevolent manner, "Even if I lose everything, no one can look down on me. I am still capable of stirring up a storm. I can still kill Ling Tian and Han Taizhuan. These two enemies who foiled my plans. Ha 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 ha. Wei Chengping burst out into a crazed laughter. In the afternoon. Mr. must have had a long and tiring journey. Wei Chengping said with a gentle tone. In front of him, a stick of sandalwood was burning, and its fragrance filled the entire room. Spare me the pleasantries. Since you have taken out the martial order medallion, don't beat around the bush any longer. Speak, who do you want to kill? In front of him, a green-robed man was seated with the Northern Wei martial order medallion in his hands. After studying it carefully for a moment, he put it into his bosom. While the words spoken by this man were extremely distant and cold, his tone was calm without a trace of emotions in them. I only took out the martial order medallion because I was forced to do so, Wei Chengping said with a rigid smile. There are two people who I need Mr. to kill. Before he could finish his sentence, the green-robed man had already interrupted him. Bestowing a monarch with a martial order medallion, a life in exchange for a medallion. Wei Chengping, I can only kill a single person for you. His words were spoken without any margin for leeway. Wei Chengping then put out an awkward smile. This. I wonder if Mr. can make an exception? Wei Chengping has two mortal enemies at the moment. Regardless of the price. The green-robed man let out a snort as he rolled his eyes. Wei Chengping, the martial order medallion has been taken out. You had better make up your mind fast, lest I get annoyed and kill you too. If not for the fact that you have the martial order medallion, your nagging would have already made you a dead man. As the green-robed man's chilly eyes swept past him, Wei Chengping felt as though he had been thrown into a freezer, with a chill running down his spine and his hair standing up on edge. He completely forgot what he wanted to say as he felt his whole head turn blank. The green-robed man then revealed an unconcealed look of disdain. Speak, between Han Taizhuan and Ling Tian, who do you want me to kill? A trace of shock could be seen on Wei Chengping's face as he said respectfully, Mr. is wise indeed. If Mr. can. The green-robed man coldly glared at Wei Chengping without saying a single word. However, killing intent began to emanate from his eyes. Wei Chengping quickly wiped away the sweat on his forehead as he forced a smile. All right then, since Mr. insists, I can only choose one of the two. After considering for a moment, Wei Chengping opened his voice and said, I will have to trouble Mr. to kill Ling Tian. At that moment, Wei Chengping was certain that if Ling Tian didn't die, he would definitely be living in the nightmare that Ling Tian brought him for all his life. In comparison, while Han Taizhuan's betrayal was the main reason for his Northern Wei's defeat, Wei Chengping did not think that Han Taizhuan was worth a martial order medallion. The green-robed man then suddenly concealed himself in the smoke of the burning sandalwood and Wei Chengping could no longer see his appearance. Then, Wei Chengping felt the body of the green-robed man turn misty in the smoke, and a soft sigh could be heard from within the smoke. When the cloud of smoke dispersed, not a single soul could be seen in front of Wei Chengping. Just when he was feeling puzzled, a crisp voice sounded by his ears, the martial order medallion has been received. May the monarch treasure his life. Wei Chengping was stunned for a moment as he muttered these words a few times. Then, he suddenly burst out into laughter. Ling Tian! You are dead for sure. In the palace, Wei Chengping's hysterical laughter echoed. Ling Tian, you are dead for sure. Ling Tian, you are dead for. Ling Tian, you are. Wei Chengping wants to kill Ling Tian? Did he use the martial order medallion that belongs to Northern Wei? The usually calm Yu Man Lu jumped up from his seat and exclaimed, using the martial order medallion to kill Ling Tian? That should be the case. This piece of news was sent by our spies from the palace and it is definitely accurate. Wei Chengping did indeed meet someone in secret and no one dared to approach that place. After that, Wei Chengping's mood took a 180-degree turn and was filled with ecstasy. A black-robed man could be seen opposite Yu Man Lu. Good. The final trump card of Northern Wei has been used. I do not need to be wary of anything anymore. Yu Man Lu stood up and paced around the room. After a while, he then let out a sigh and shook his head. It is just too fast. Too sudden. The black-dressed man also frowned. Yes, it is indeed too fast. Too sudden. The time left for us. In fact, they did not even leave any time for us. While the final trump card that could threaten family head was removed, our original plan would probably be. We cannot change it. Yu Man Lu said with certainty as a resolute gaze could be seen in his eyes. Immediately send out the messenger doves to third brother who is in sky bearing. Ask him to propose a marriage to the Ling family. Order him to ensure that the proposal is successful no matter what. Tell him that he doesn't need to return if he doesn't make this happen. The body of the black-robed man shook, and he replied, yes. Yu Man Lu then paced around again as he said in a cold tone, if she cannot become the first wife, then she can become a wife of equal status. If she cannot even be a wife of equal status, she can be Ling Tian's concubine. No matter what, Yanner must marry Ling Tian. There must be a proper title. It must happen quickly. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. The black-robed man felt beads of sweat rolling down his face. For the Yu and Ling families to become in-laws, it should have been a prosperous event. However, it seemed to be no more than an urgent strategic move from Yu Man Lu's tone. There wasn't a single trace of prosperity in his words, and they were instead filled with a chilly cold. Order the first elder and third elder to lead 300 white jade experts to sky bearing to send Bing Yan's dowry. Set off immediately. Dowry? The black-robed man was thrown off by this order as he asked carefully, family head, we are only confirming the marriage, isn't it too early to send over the dowry? Furthermore, the moment their marriage is confirmed, Bing Yan will belong to the Ling family. Even if Ling Yan dies, Bing Yan is still the unwed daughter-in-law of the Ling family. For us to send the dowry now. This. Are you getting senile? Yu Man Lu glared at the black-robed man. Ling Tian has many experts under his command, and when he dies, it will be impossible for Bing Yan to grasp the authority of the Ling family from those experts. Furthermore, Bing Yan is now completely smitten by Ling Tian and will probably not agree to the family's decision. We need a proper reason for our men to enter the Ling family so they can grasp the authority of the Ling family in their hands. 300 white jade experts seems like too few. Bring another 500 purple jade experts to ensure that everything goes well. Chapter 337, Returning Triumphant. Yes. Under the awe-inspiring presence of Yu Man Lu, the black-robed elder could only feel as though his back was covered in cold sweat. 300 white jade cultivators, and 500 purple jade cultivators, that was almost 80% of the main force from the Yu family. To think that their head viewed the Ling family so highly. However, as though he had thought of something, the elder raised his head to speak. However, based on the customs in Heavenly Star, the bride has to return to her family after the engagement, and only move over after they were formally married. Yu Man Lu coldly snorted at this. I naturally have my own preparations for this. At that time, Bing Yan will suddenly develop a serious illness. Thus the Ling family cannot chase her out of their house. Furthermore, the martial order medallion has already been used, so how long does Ling Tian still have? We can't delay this. Family head has foresight. The old man buttered him up. This servant will get your matters done now. Yu Man Lu waved his hands, be quick. Following the old man's departure, a black-robed middle-aged man drifted in the window like a specter. This was the expert bodyguard that never left Yu Man Lu's side. Wu Po, how goes things at Western Han? Yu Man Lu slowly walked to his desk and picked up his teacup, savoring a mouthful of tea. The latest news from Western Han is that the country is celebrating the victory in battle. Han Taizhuan has been conferred the title of North Marquis. He has effectively pressed down all the other generals, only leaving a minor influence under the Zai men. The black-robed man replied. Even when facing Yu Manlu, his voice remained dead, not carrying any hint of emotion. Yu Manlu was already well accustomed to his speaking and wasn't bothered by it. However, he was surprised by the content of the intelligence. With such a large merit obtained, why was so little conferred to him? This does not make sense. The problem lies with the young noble of the Zai men family. That kid somehow made his way to the battlefield after the war ended, and chatted up Ling Tian. It seems like he made a good impression with Ling Tian, and with his tacit consent, that kid collected all the spoils of war, making him the second greatest contributor after Han Taizhuan. Zai Mensa? Yu Manlu slapped the table and stood up, unable to restrain his anger. Another scheme from Ling Tian. He knows that Han Taizhuan is under the command of my Yu family and is unwilling to allow him to get the full credit, so he's even willing to let his enemies take advantage in order to spoil my plans. Ling Tian, what vicious methods you have! What an insane scheme, what foresight! Suddenly, he started to laugh instead, jubilantly saying, while you might have intelligence beyond that of a mortal, but even you won't be able to escape from the pursuit of the unrivaled expert of this generation. That is something this old man, whom even if I overturn the Yu family, would not even dare to try. Ling Tian, you're dead. Thinking about that, Yu Manlu suddenly felt as though he was refreshed. When compared to the death of Ling Tian, Han Taizhuan's matter suddenly seemed unimportant. Yu Manlu also felt a little smug at this point. If I can obtain the influence created by Ling Tian, then how could anyone be a match for the Yu family? What water of heavenly wind? He. As for Ling Tian, who originally wanted to have a good rest, he never expected himself to be immediately swamped with work to the point where he estimated even if he had 4 arms he would be hard-pressed to cope. So god-deed busy. He had never been so busy even in his past life. When Ling Tian was still 20 kilometers away from Skybearing, he could already see the people from his family coming over to greet him on horseback. However, before he could feel any relief or happiness at this, he was almost scared silly by the words that came out of Ling Tian's mouth. Young noble, it's good luck you're back. If you hadn't returned by now, we probably would have collapsed. Seeing Ling Tian crying in such an exaggerated manner, Ling Tian only felt depressed. Did something out of his expectations actually happen? He heard Ling Tian continue, the house is about to flip, and we're waiting all this while for you to make a decision. Finally, you're back. What happened exactly? Was there a complication? Ling Tian frowned as he got off his horse, rubbing his sore butt after all the hours of riding on horseback. While this young noble Ling had martial arts that surpassed all mortal ability, the fact was that he was only 15 or 16 years of age. His body might be similar to that of an adult, but there were still places which were obviously more tender as compared to a grown man. These few days, his smooth thighs had been completely rubbed raw by the chafing between his pants and the saddle. Clenching his teeth and enduring his abrasions, he asked, "There's my grandparents, my mother and Ling Chen in the house, so how could it be chaotic?" In his heart, Ling Tian never treated the problem in Skybearing as something of this magnitude. He knew that many officials, as well as his family members, probably could not wait to display all the abilities that would be locked down on a normal day, so how could there still be a problem? Cough cough, actually, the majority of our affairs have already been cleared up. This is all thanks to old Master Ling. Ling Tian gave a thumbs up in praise. He indeed is a veteran in war. Just that same day, he had already cleared the entire area and arranged everything thoroughly. If old Master Ling did not appear, let's not talk about the Skybearing army, even Shenru, who would not have been handled so easily by us. The greatest problem actually lies in the now ex-Emperor Long Xiang. Because of conflicting thoughts, Old Master and the old madam actually began to quarrel, and even after 2 days, they still do not want to give way. Ling Tian scratched his head in confusion. In his entire life, he had never seen his grandparents being at loggerheads with each other, with his grandfather usually giving way to his wife. Even that year, after he threw Zhou Fenghan's face so badly, his grandfather's temper was immediately appeased when his wife stepped into the scene. So what was wrong this time? Where's that dog Long Xiang right now? Ling Tian sighed. He's still locked in the prison of our residence. That rabid dog had long been paralyzed with fear, begging and pleading all day. When we had taken him down, he almost peed his pants. What a shameful person. Old Master Ling had always been one who valued sentimentality and thus wanted to take care of him properly, since he also received news that the master was unharmed and well. However, the old madam said that such a vicious person should not be left alive and should be pulled from the roots as soon as possible. Thus the residence has now split into two sides, both sides mutually confronting each other. Consort Ling is crying up a fuss every day after knowing that her husband has been captured, and Princess Jiayu is also washing her face with her tears every single day. Madame Chutinger could not take it anymore and already ran away to the Ling family courtyard. If not for her handling our affairs, we would be hard-pressed. The muscles in Ling Tian's forehead continuously twitched. Obviously, he did not have it easy the last few days either. Oh my f***ing god. Ling Tian covered his face with his palm and screamed out in misery. What followed next were his flames of wrath. You bunch of useless, brainless fools. Why couldn't you guys use a bit more brains, and quickly silence him among the confusion of the crowd? Why do you have to leave his dog life up till now? For me to handle? Making me the evil person, are you guys not thinking at all? He is the nephew of my grandfather and my only uncle. How do you think I can handle this situation by myself? You think I will want to release him? And do you think I can kill him? FK me. Ling Tian was so depressed that he spat out vulgarities like saliva. This matter, no matter how one looked at it, would not have a satisfactory outcome. Even with 2 lifetimes of experience, and with the penchant of vicious methods, Ling Tian was still, in the end, a junior in the family. Even if Long Xiang had committed some heaven-defying crime, it still wasn't his place to say anything. If he suggested having Long Xiang killed, most likely, he would only end up with the tag of being heartless. This was him looking at the bigger picture because there was still his aunt Ling Ren on the scene. We definitely had that thought. Ling Chen had long told us to take advantage of the chaos at that time to kill that BSD road. Ling Tian wailed in frustration. However, the whole plan went so smoothly that there was no chaos at all. The moment we were done with our jobs, the whole place was already under lockdown by our people. The moment Ling 17 placed his sword on the neck of Shenru Hu, Old Master Ling had already appeared, and with a few sentences, already settled the invading sky-bearing army. Where would there still be a chance for us? And Long Xiang, that coward, he had already started peeing when he saw this scene. Hey eyes, we had 0 chance from the very beginning. Idiots. You and Ling Lei are really 2 pig-headed fools. Ling Yan glared at them. Since the outcome was already set in stone, he could not change anything no matter what he said. However, he paused for a while, and with a roll of his eyeballs, he immediately formulated a plan. Ling Tian immediately whispered to Ling Tian, saying, "In a while, the carriage of General Ling will arrive. I'll escape first and say that I'm going to make a report. You will say it like this, understand?" Ling Tian's mouth curled up, and he had an expression that looked as though he was about to cry and laugh at the same time. If I were to say it like that, then General Ling will definitely tear me apart. Young noble, it's not like you don't know his temper. Ling Tian smirked a little. My father is now riddled with wounds and definitely will not be able to tear you apart. The most he could do would be to beat you up a bit. Okay, let's fix it so. I'll move ahead first. Ling Tian harshly slapped the rump of his horse, disappearing like a bolt of lightning. Ling Tian stared at Ling Tian vanishing like a cloud of smoke, having an expression as though he wanted to cry but had no tears. "Young noble, are you riding on a dragon? How could you disappear so quickly?" Seeing the carriage of Ling Zhou slowly approaching from afar, Ling Tian could only clench his teeth and move up to meet them. It was unknown what he told Ling Zhou, but everyone definitely heard the roar of fury coming from within the carriage. Ling Tian was seen staggering out, and mounting his horse, he immediately retreated. However, he got hit in the head by a black thing before he could even turn his horse around. Ling Qi and the rest stared at the offending object. It turned out to be General Ling's leather boot. Immediately, they were further greeted with his helmet, his other boot, even the pillows, teacups and the sandalwood tea table were thrown out one by one. Ling Tian screamed, and in his disheveled state, he did not even bother with his horse any longer. He leaped off from horseback, initiating his movement skills and disappearing in a flash. The speed he used was even faster than that of his peers. From the carriage came curses and shouts from General Ling, "Call that bastard back. This old man hasn't understood what he's saying." Ling Jian, Ling Feng, Ling Yun, Ling Qi, and Ling 19 exchanged glances, and at this point revealed surprising chemistry. All five immediately urged their horses forward, pulling away from Ling Zhou's carriage, ignoring all the shouting and cursing from him. Chapter 338, Only Choice. Marshal Ling's cursing sounded across the whole army throughout the journey. The whole army marched back to Skybearing hearing the incessant cursing of Marshal Ling. Their original good mood from emerging victorious was completely destroyed by Marshal Ling's cursing. The way his voice was filled with energy without a single sign of breathlessness, who would believe that Marshal Ling was actually seriously injured? Ling Tian purposefully roamed outside for a while and hid in the smoky Thea Tower for a full 4 hours. After calculating that the time should be about right, he then slowly made his way back to the Ling residence. His turtle-like speed on the way back was unprecedented in his life. When he went back home, a good show was playing out in the Ling residence with the bandaged Marshal Ling going crazy. He insisted that he wanted to settle his scores with Long Xiang, and it took the strength of a few burly men to hold him back with great difficulty. "Big brother, His Majesty was hoodwinked by a scoundrel and it was just a moment of folly. I hope that Big Brother will forgive him." This was Consort Ling Ran's voice. "Good brat, you even dare to make a huge fuss in front of your old man? See how this old man takes care of you." This was Duke Ling's voice. "Father, I was almost killed by the schemes of that BST road and I will not forgive him with just a simple he was hoodwinked by a scoundrel. I am not so benevolent. So what if I am being petty? I definitely won't let him off." This boorish voice obviously belonged to the heavily injured General Ling. He obviously wanted to address himself as this daddy, but realized that his own father was in front of him. Although his temper was raging, he still managed to force himself to swallow those words. While Long Xiang's actions could not be pardoned, he was still Ling Ran's husband after all. Thus, no matter what grievances she felt in her heart, Ling Ran could not bear to see her own husband being beaten to death by her own brother. However, who would have expected that Duke Ling's personal appearance and Ling Ran kneeling on the floor pleading was completely useless. Ling Zhou was like a raging bull who could not be stopped. Even his own father and little sister could not stop him. As Ling Tian watched that scene, he nodded his head and thought to himself, his performance is good indeed. I wonder, where did Ling Jian and the rest disappear? They probably ran away upon seeing that a storm was brewing. Ling Tian then gave out a sigh. It seems like my plan to get rid of Long Xiang using my father will fail. He then turned around and wanted to go back to his own courtyard, hoping to hide from the storm before making his appearance. Besides, while he did not see Ling Qing and Yu Bingyan for just a few days, the bitter battle had made these few days seem like a few years. Now that he was back at home, even the grasses and flowers made him feel a sense of familiarity. You little brat. Stop right there. You still dare to run away? Old Madam Ling was originally watching the show off to the side. But upon seeing that her grandson was about to escape, she was both angered and amused as she shouted at him. At this moment, Ling Tian already had a foot out of the courtyard and he turned around awkwardly. Old Madam Ling then walked over briskly and pulled Ling Tian's ears. Let me ask you, who ignited this explosive temper of your father? Don't tell me you don't know. Ling Tian blinked his eyes and said with an innocent look, Grandmother, what are you talking about? Ignite what? Is our house on fire? Why don't I know? Little brat. Just continue feigning ignorance. You dare to tell me that you don't know anything. Old Madam Ling scolded laughingly as she exerted more force and Ling Tian's ears were elongated further. Speak. Do I really have to say? Ling Tian felt helpless. Yes. Old Madam Ling said with a resolute tone. CEI. Ling Tian took in a breath of cold air and he truly felt the pain this time. Grandmother, please let go. Pain. Okay, I will tell you the truth. On the way back, we met Ling Tian and this grandson ignored him as I was sleeping. Thus, he went to find father. As for everything that happened after, I don't know already. I really don't know. You still dare to say that you don't know? You still dare to lie? Old Madam Ling exerted even more strength in anger as she pointed towards Ling Zhou who was going crazy. Without your permission, would Ling Tian have the guts to anger your father to such an extent with a few words of his? Also, since when did Long Xiang say that he wanted to take all the ladies in the Ling family to become his harem? Ling Tian was startled as he jumped up in anger with an ashen face. FK. I didn't say that, Ling Tian, that brat must have added on that nonsense. I will definitely teach him a good lesson later. I only said. Ling Tian then paused for a moment and knew that he had been tricked. It was impossible for Ling Tian to come up with such a lie for sure. Looking at old Madam Ling's cunning-looking face, Ling Tian let out a long sigh as he thought, the old ginger is indeed spicier. You only said? Old Madam Ling's eyes shone with a crafty light. You actually dare to use your father as a spear now? Am I right? Ling Tian let out a bitter sigh and an idea flashed in his head. Grandmother, I heard that grandfather was going against you and I only wanted to help you. Furthermore, this is a serious matter and it is difficult for us to deal with Long Xiang. Does grandmother have any ideas to solve this problem? The moment Ling Tian mentioned this matter, old Madam Ling no longer had the mood to disturb him any further and also let out a sigh. Our whole family is now troubled by this matter. Both killing or letting him off isn't a good plan. Ling Tian fell silent for a moment before saying, the one thing we must never do is let the tiger back into the mountain. Even if we don't kill him, we cannot let him off. We should first imprison him before making a decision. A flash of inspiration then flashed in his head and Ling Tian had a bright idea. Old Madam Ling then pulled Ling Tian to the side as she said, I was waiting for you to come back so we can discuss this matter. What do you think we should do with regards to sky-bearing? What should our Ling family do? I believe that you have a plan in your heart already, right? Ling Tian frowned. I am actually torn between two different choices. Grandmother, this definitely isn't the best time for our Ling family to rise up. No matter what, our Ling family is still a subject of the sky-bearing empire. No matter what heinous things Long Xiang has done, we would definitely be regarded as traitorous if we were to replace Long Xiang. At that time, we would no longer be the victims but a treacherous subject of the sky-bearing empire. The other powers can then make use of this opportunity to suppress sky-bearing in the name of seeking justice for the sky-bearing imperial family. At the present moment, our sky-bearing empire is already riddled with injuries with many pressing matters to be settled. We definitely cannot afford another war. Furthermore, the various great families would definitely be dissatisfied if we were to usurp the throne. The consequences of that are not something which we can face at the moment. However, if we do not take the position of the Emperor and Long Xiong has already been pulled down by us, the sky-bearing empire is left without a leader. Haze. Ling Tian shook his head and let out a sigh while secretly watching out for old Madame Ling's expression. That's right, old Madame Ling said with frustration, we are indeed in a dilemma. This old lady doesn't have any ideas to solve this problem. If not, I wouldn't have to wait for your return. As she said that, she began to rub the temple of her forehead as her brows furrowed in deep consideration. Grandmother, I have an idea. Ling Tian blinked his eyes and said with a meaningful smile, it may help us solve our present dilemma. What is the idea? Spill it out quickly. Old Madame Ling had already been frustrated thoroughly by this matter over the past few days. Long Xiong is already in our hands and all of his princes have already been killed. If that's the case, we can let him write an imperial edict to make the child in Aunt's womb the crown prince. Then, we can let grandfather, father, Minister Wei and General Shen to manage the imperial court to handle the political affairs. Furthermore, we must make one thing clear. No lady is allowed to interfere with stately affairs. Ling Tian said with a chilly gaze flashing past his eyes. What a cruel plan. Ling Ran is your aunt. Old Madame Ling looked at her grandson in shock. If they were to make an unborn infant the crown prince, of the 4 ministers running the imperial court, Ling Zhou and Ling Zan were father and son, and Shenru who is Ling Zan's disciple. The only one who wasn't within their circle was Wei Zhengfeng. However, Minister Wei did not have any true authority and the full authority of the military and court would fall into the hands of the Ling family. With the condition that Ling Tian had added to disallow ladies from interfering with stately affairs, this would mean that Ling Ran wouldn't be able to create any trouble. This plan of Ling Tian's was definitely in line with the ancestral teachings, or perhaps it was the only loophole in the ancestral teachings. As such, sky-bearing would still belong to the Long family, and the Ling family would still be a subject of the empire. They would not catch the attention of anyone and can even feign weakness to their enemies. It would also make their enemies think that the Ling family did not have the intention to rule the world. While everyone would know that sky-bearing was fully controlled by the Ling family, the actions of the Ling family would still be faultless. After Long Xiong had plotted against the Ling family had still buried the hatchet and aided the new young ruler with all their heart. Instead of being a treacherous subject, the Ling family would earn the reputation of a loyal and faithful subject. My aunt? Grandmother, did you see how she pleaded for my father to let her husband off? That guy is someone who almost killed my father and destroyed our whole family. She actually wants us to let him off just by saying that it was a moment of folly. No matter what, I will not concede on this point for sure. Ling Tian said without any room for leeway. Long Xiong probably wouldn't agree to this, right? Old Madame Ling said, furthermore, this is also a little too cruel to your aunt, right? It wouldn't be too fair to her either. Tanner, while this plan of yours can help settle all our problems, Ling Ran is still your aunt. Are you a little too? Ling Tian responded with a smile, grandmother is thinking too much. Is Long Xiong's agreement even important? Do we still need him to agree right now? As for aunt, I originally didn't want to say anything. But, grandmother, do you really think there is fairness in this world? Ling Tian's lips then curled up in a cruel smile. The moment Long Xiong decided to wipe out our Ling family, he had completely ignored the husband and wife ties between him and aunt. He still wants to rely on aunt to save his life now? If our Ling family were to be destroyed, aunt's life would definitely be extremely miserable for the rest of her life. Under the pressure of Yang Zhu and the Yang family, her child might have not even be born. Even if he were to be born, it would be impossible for him to ascend to the throne. Now, while we cannot give away the sky-bearing empire that we have fought so hard for, we can definitely give aunt a life of prosperity. This can already be considered as a fortune for her and she should be satisfied with that. She should not be grumbling and she definitely shouldn't wish for anything more. There isn't an ending that would be better than this, and we do not have any other choice at this moment. Chapter 339, Tender Sentiments. Old Madame Ling Tian let out a sigh and went silent for a long while as she looked towards the sky. All right then. Wait. How are you so certain that your aunt's child is a boy? What if her child is a girl? Then wouldn't all our arrangements go to waste? Ling Tian let out a smile and said slowly, Grandmother, apart from our Ling family, who would know if her child is a boy or girl? If we say her child is a boy, he will be a boy. Even if her child turns out to be a girl, her child will still be a boy. Ha ha ha. As Ling Tian walked into his own courtyard, he looked at the two familiar figures by the rack of grapes and couldn't help but be emotionally moved in his heart. While it seemed easy for him to rush into the Northern Wei army to save his father, the truth was that he was on the edge of life and death. Death loomed so close to him as he charged through the battlefield. It could be said that he had spent a few days in King Yama's palace before making his way back home. Looking at the two most precious ladies in his life, he suddenly felt as though he had not seen them for a few years. For Ling Zhou to suffer from an ambush this time was well within Ling Tian's expectations. The past 2 generations of the Ling family were without a doubt loyal to Sky-bearing. Without a huge change, it was impossible for them to become enemies with the imperial family. If he didn't change the loyal attitude of his own family, it was very likely that he would have to end up facing his own family on the battlefield. Even if that wasn't the case, both his father and grandfather would definitely be torn apart by their loyalties. Thus, Ling Tian purposefully gave Long Xiang an opening to create a reason for their falling out, giving him the chance to uproot Long Xiang and the Yang family. At the same time, his grandfather and father would not have any guilt in their hearts as well, and he would be able to help the both of them see Long Xiang's wolf-like ambitions. While taking his father's and grandfather's feelings into consideration, he would still be able to take another step towards his ambitions. However, Ling Tian never expected things to grow so wildly out of his expectations and control. The Yu family, Shui family, Northern Wei, Western Han, and Sky-bearing had all participated in this scheme to kill his father. Ling Tian originally thought that only the Northern Wei and Sky-bearing would join hands, but the reality was far out of his expectations. This time, he had almost allowed both his own and his father's life to be lost. Up until now, Ling Tian still felt a sense of lingering fear in his heart. If he had been a single step too late and without the unexpected intervention of the Yu family, and if everything had gone according to the Shui family's plan, Ling Tian felt a chill run down his spine at the thought of that possibility. While his father was already safe and sound, Ling Tian still blamed himself in his heart. After this incident, Ling Tian could deeply feel that a man's strength would definitely be lacking at some moments, and a man's wisdom would definitely fail him at times. The if truly exists, and no one would be able to fully calculate all the possibilities. Accidents would always be out of one's expectations, and there would be no limit to the possibility of accidents. If he still dared to think that the situation was firmly grasped in his hands, it would only be a matter of time before he suffered a great loss. Who on earth would be able to fully understand the ways of the heavens? Tian''G.T. You are finally back. Yu Bingyan let out an excited scream from afar as she dived into Ling Tian's bosom. Before she even said a thing, her tears had already drenched Ling Tian's top. You are finally back. Woo wah woo. Both Sister Chen and I have been so worried for you. We had nightmares every night. We really can't take it any longer. Ling Tian hugged the obviously skinnier beauty and stroked her head gently as he said with a gentle tone, Silly lass, I am safe and sound. What are you crying for? You won't be pretty if you cry until your eyes turn into panda eyes. If that happens, I will definitely feel heartache. Just when she was sobbing, Yu Bingyan couldn't help but giggle at Ling Tian's words. You are the one with the panda eyes. You still dare say that you will feel heartache, angering me the moment you come back. HMPH. As she said that, She stomped her feet as she wanted to start whining. With the tears still at the corner of her eyes and a sweet smile on her face, she was like a blossoming flower, incomparably beautiful and fresh. As Ling Tian looked towards Ling Chen, he saw her looking at him silently under the rack of grapes. It was as though there was no one else but him in her eyes at this moment. When Ling Tian first came back, Ling Chen welcomed him with a bright smile. However, the smile slowly became forced as she bit down on her lips as though forcing herself to maintain the smile. It was as though she wanted to let her most beloved man see the smile on her face when he returned. However, 2 streams of tears had still found their way down her cheeks. At this moment, Ling Chen's dainty figure was like a lily in the storm, filled with gentleness but yet looking as though it would give way at any moment. It was as though she would collapse any time and be unable to get back up. Just when Yu Bingyan had silently left Ling Tian's embrace, Ling Tian took another step forward and was about to spread his arms out. But before he got a chance to do so, he felt another figure rush straight into his embrace and hug him tightly. It was as though that figure wanted to melt into his embrace. Ling Tian was overwhelmed by emotions as he held on to the dainty figure in his arms, hating the fact that he couldn't be one with her. Ling Chen's body trembled in Ling Tian's embrace as though she had suffered from a great shock and had yet to recover her senses. She was like a kidnapped child who had finally seen her parents again. The both of them didn't say a single word as they hugged each other tightly as though the other party would disappear the moment they let go of each other. Ling Tian felt a damp and warm feeling at his chest before it turned into a cold feeling, slowly seeping down his shirt. Those were Ling Chen's tears drenching Ling Tian's shirt and flowing down his chest. A long while later, Ling Tian felt the beauty in his embrace slowly recovering from her trembling. With a sigh, he stroked her silky hair and gently raised up her head up. Clearing his throat, he said with a hoarse voice, "Chen'er." Looking at the frail-looking beauty and obviously skinnier Ling Chen, he suddenly realized that he had only been gone for a mere 4 days. Feeling his heart ache, the words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat. Ling Chen then buried her head in Ling Tian's embrace again as she began whimpering. It was as though she didn't want to ever lift her head up from Ling Tian's embrace for the rest of her life. Ling Tian let out a helpless sigh and said with a smile, "Chen'er, be a good girl and let me change into a new set of clothes before hugging you and letting you cry to your heart's content. If you are going to cry any further, people will think that I lost control of my crotch. If someone were to come in at this moment, I would definitely be embarrassed. Your tears have already flowed down to my pants." "Puchy. What nonsense. Annoying." Ling Chen burst out into laughter as she stomped her feet and let out a soft HMPH to display her displeasure. However, her soft HMPH was like a gentle moan in Ling Tian's ears, both whiny and lovable. Thus, it lit up the lust in Ling Tian's eyes instead. As though she suddenly felt something, Ling Chen let out a shriek and quickly left Ling Tian's embrace. Looking at Ling Tian, she realized that there was indeed a large patch of tears stretching down from his chest to his. Ling Chen then felt her face turn red as though she had thought about something. With another shriek, she turned around and dashed into the room at a lightning-fast speed. Yu Bingyan opened her mouth in shock as she gasped, "Ah, Sister Chen really had so many tears." Ling Tian grunted and stared at her. "You contributed greatly also. At least half of this belongs to you." Yu Bingyan then placed her hands behind her back and raised her chest up proudly. "I didn't cry." As Yu Bingyan stood in front of Ling Tian with her chest raised up high, her beautiful figure curved in an alluring fashion. Especially how her proud twin peaks were standing up proudly, it made her even more alluring. Ling Tian then felt something go off in his head with a bang, and he was like a wolf letting out a loud howl in the moonlight. With his nose becoming warm, he felt as though he was about to have a nosebleed. At the same time, some part of his body also became hard and firm, feeling as though it was about to explode at any moment. Yu Bingyan still hadn't noticed anything different about Ling Tian and bounced over like a little bunny. With her waist bent slightly, she looked at Ling Tian sideways and studied the expression on Ling Tian's face. At the same time, she also began to giggle. Tian''G.T, your expression is so strange. Woo. Woo. Before she could finish her sentence, Ling Tian could no longer rein himself in any longer. Grabbing her into his embrace, he covered her lips with his own. Yu Bingyan felt her body tremble as she went stiff with an incredulous expression filling her eyes. As she wanted to open her mouth to take in a breath of air, she felt a tongue entering her mouth like a fish, roaming around every inch of her tongue. Yu Bingyan felt her head go off in a bang as well, and she was lost in this mysterious realm, feeling as though her body was light and floating with the clouds. Is the moment that I have been waiting for finally here? As though his hands had their own consciousness, Ling Tian's hands began to attack the various bases on Yu Bingyan's body. At that moment, Yu Bingyan felt as though she had been fully conquered as she weakly hung on to Ling Tian's body. Her eyes were dreamy with her face bright red. If not for Ling Tian holding on to her, she would have certainly fallen to the floor. Her hair was already in a complete mess with her black silky hair drooping down and her top half undone. At the same time, Ling Tian's hands could be seen energetically roaming about in her top. Young noble. A mosquito-like sound buzzed in Ling Tian's ears. Bingyan's body still can't. This was Ling Chen's prompt reminder. Ling Tian felt his whole body shake as the flames of lust were dispersed. Shaking his head hard, he forced himself to regain his senses and tried to push Yu Bingyan out of his embrace. However, Yu Bingyan still leaned her body onto Ling Tian. Chapter 340, Qian Huan's Visit. Ling Tian just wanted to burst out into tears. He had really suffered from his own actions. Since Yu Bingyan's divine black negative meridians hadn't been cured yet, how could he touch her? This was something that concerned her life. He definitely couldn't lose himself to a moment of folly. Ling Tian was immediately reduced to a pathetic state with cold sweat flowing down his face. The live beauty in his hands had turned into a piping hot sweet potato that he couldn't touch. To Ling Tian, who had already abstained from his lust for a few days, this was no different from torture. Just when he was feeling helpless, Ling Chen's figure appeared with a white flash and she began to circulate her divine eyes formula. Placing her palm on Yu Bingyan's forehead softly, a wave of ice-cold qi permeated her whole body and woke her up. As she opened her eyes, she immediately realized what had just happened and she felt her whole body turn hot from embarrassment. In front of Chenner and in broad daylight, in this little courtyard. The more she thought about it, the more embarrassed she got. With a soft shriek, she covered her face with her hands and escaped quickly. With just a flash of a white figure, she had already disappeared completely. The profoundness of her movement technique was indeed something rare. Ling Tian shut his eyes and took in a deep breath. After opening his eyes, he saw Ling Chen looking at him with her face pinkish and with a smile which didn't seem like a smile. Her eyes were filled with a tinge of laughter as though she was giggling about Ling Tian's pitiful appearance. Ling Tian immediately felt energized as he said with a lecherous smile, "Chenner, how bold. You actually dared to ruin the affairs of this young noble. How are you going to make it up to me?" With the both of them so near each other, Ling Chen's fragrance had already made its way to Ling Tian's nose and he was already completely ignited. Ling Chen was taken aback for a moment as she looked at Ling Tian's burning eyes. She immediately knew what Ling Tian was thinking of. But, it is still in the day, Ling Chen immediately turned tail and ran away. How would Ling Tian let her escape? He quickly caught up to her and hugged her in his embrace. "Little lass, now that you have chased away my beauty, you shall have to replace her. This young noble has really missed you greatly." Hugging her dainty body, he dashed into the room like a sex fiend. Ling Tian felt her body turn hot from shyness as she struggled to no avail. After a while, she gave up her struggles, but her face remained buried in Ling Tian's embrace, refusing to lift her head up. She could still feel Ling Tian's hands roaming around her body, and just when she said, "No," her mouth was immediately stopped by Ling Tian's lips and she couldn't say a second word. The room was then filled with odd noises. A very long while later, Ling Tian crawled up from the bed in satisfaction as he leaned back with his hands behind his head. No wonder people say that after being in the army for 3 years, even a female pig will become a beauty. This is too true indeed, even though it has only been a few days. How satisfying. Behind him, Ling Tian was panting underneath the sheets with her face drenched in sweat and unable to even lift up a finger. Hearing what Ling Tian had said, she began to whine, "You! Who are you calling a female pig?" Ling Tian chuckled and dived into Ling Tian's chest as he explored around and said in a barely inaudible tone, You're the female pig. I am the male pig. We are a pair of pigs. Woo! How fragrant, how smooth. Young noble, there is a strange man outside who requests an audience." Just when Ling Tian had brewed himself a cup of tea, a servant reported to him. "Strange man? How is he strange?" Ling Tian asked. After thinking for a moment, the servant gave a serious response. "He is covered in black cloth all over and we can't see his real appearance. Furthermore, he speaks in an unclear fashion as well as though not wanting us to hear his true voice. While he seems tall, with the black cloth making his figure look huge, we can easily see his skinny figure when the wind blows. This subordinate also saw that his hair is extremely short and black. As such, I am certain that he isn't too old for sure. Furthermore, this person also has calluses on his hands and is probably a martial arts practitioner as well." "Oh?" Ling Tian could not help but be interested. However, he wasn't interested in that black-robed man but in this servant in front of him. This fellow had such astute observational skills, and it was obvious that he had prepared these responses beforehand. No matter what he asked, this servant was still able to give him a satisfactory answer. "What is your name? Are you new here? What was your original occupation?" Ling Tian lifted up his teacup and blew the rising steam off it. At the same time, his gaze was locked firmly on this servant. "This subordinate is Zhang Dikwan, and I am 20 years old this year. I always had a large appetite since young and so I got this name." As though he was a little terrified, Zhang Dik trembled slightly. "This subordinate entered the Ling residence 7 days ago and Sir Ling too was the one who arranged for me to be a messenger. This subordinate was originally a blacksmith." Despite it being a casual question by Ling Tian, Zhang Dik was actually able to recite out his reply without any mistake. A chilly glare flashed past Ling Tian's eyes and he said emotionlessly, "Oh, you may leave now. Invite the guest in." "Yes, young noble." Zhang Dik gave a respectful bow and walked out slowly. When he turned around, Ling Tian noticed the ears of Zhang Dik twitching slightly as though he was smiling. He was obviously elated by the fact that he had put on a wonderful performance. Ling Tian could even imagine the perverse smile on his face. Ling Tian began to frown as he thought, this Zhang Dik doesn't seem like a simple individual. A mere blacksmith actually knowing the rights of an aristocratic family? Furthermore, his observational skills are so acute with his thoughts extremely meticulous. He was actually able to make use of every single opportunity to fully display his talents. While he had a face full of fear in the face of my questioning, his fingers were completely steady without even the single trace of trembling. A 20-year-old blacksmith? If a blacksmith was able to have such a temperament and shrewdness, all the blacksmiths in the world could become strategists instead. How interesting. Ling Tian shut his eyes as he thought, you think that you can become a spy with such meager skills? Regardless of who is behind you, you are looking down on me too much. Young noble Ling, it has been long. A black-robed figure slowly walked into the courtyard. Has it been long? Ling Tian felt a sense of familiarity. Who are you? Have I seen you before? Young noble Ling is forgetful indeed. An unconcealed voice of hatred sounded. We had a brief meeting from afar and I believe that young noble Ling wouldn't forget this old friend so quickly, right? As he said that, the black-robed man removed the cloth covering his face and revealed a suave and young appearance. Oh, so it is you. Ling Tian replied indifferently. You actually dare to come here alone? Shui Qianhuan, is everyone from your Shui family so bold? This person was actually the individual who conspired with Northern Wei, coerced Skybearing and allied with Western Han to lead 400,000 soldiers to surround Lingzhou. He was the one who almost killed Lingzhou, and was the successor of Water of Heavenly Wind, Shui Qianhuan. He actually had the guts to show up in front of Ling Tian. Young noble Ling, are you not even going to offer this old friend a glass of water? As though he was in his own house, Shui Qianhuan walked over to the seat opposite Ling Tian and sat down. Is this how your Ling family treats its guests? Shui Qianhuan, can you even be considered a guest? Ling Tian said with a steady expression. Despite saying that, he still clapped his hands lightly and a maid walked in with a tray of tea. Ever since Ling Tian acknowledged Ling Chen's status, he ignored the disagreement of Ling Chen and transferred another maid to serve their daily needs. At the same time, he thought to himself, just what is Shui Qianhuan relying on to be so calm? Good tea. Young noble Ling is indeed surrounded by good quality goods. After taking a sip of the tea, Shui Qianhuan felt a refreshing feeling filling his entire body. In his life, he had never tasted such good tea and could not help but praise. Ling Tian only stared at him coldly, as though wanting to look into the depths of Shui Qianhuan's soul. Without saying a single word, the whole room was filled with a tense atmosphere as though a volcano was about to erupt. However, Shui Qianhuan continued to savor the tea as though he could not feel a thing and his expression was unchanged with his sleeves not even trembling. You are afraid of me? Ling Tian suddenly asked as his sharp gaze was unblinkingly locked onto Shui Qianhuan's eyes. Afraid of you? Ha ha ha. Shui Qianhuan chuckled, does the young noble Ling think that I have to be afraid of anyone? Ling Tian leaned his body slightly forward as he looked at Shui Qianhuan with a pitying gaze. I didn't want to give you a setback but your acting is just too fake. Your act is far too unnatural and forced. Shui Qianhuan, no matter how good your acting is, it doesn't mean that you will be able to fool others. Too far is as bad as not enough. I believe that you have heard this phrase before, right? Ling Tian then looked at Shui Qianhuan with unconcealed disdain. You are purposefully acting as though you are extremely calm and indifferent towards everything in the world, purposefully putting on an act to make yourself look extremely natural. However, you acting extremely natural makes it seem as though you care too much. Your natural bearing and demeanor are all an act that you are putting on. So, you must definitely be afraid in your heart. However, I don't think that you are afraid that I will kill you. So, what are you afraid of? Ling Tian said with a trace of ridicule. Shui Qianhuan's suave appearance first turned red before he started laughing with mockery. Ling Tian, I have to admit that you have a keen eyesight. However, didn't you admit it yourself? You don't dare to kill me. Ha ha ha, aren't you also afraid? Afraid of the prestige of my Shui family? What are you acting so arrogant about? Ha ha. Ling Tian stared at Shui Qianhuan silently for a moment before letting out a snicker. I was wrong indeed, you actually think so highly of yourself. Shui Qianhuan, while the strength of your Shui family is powerful, there must have been many of your subordinates that died under my hands, right? I am already mortal enemies with your Shui family. If I kill you, your Shui family will definitely not let the matter rest. But if I don't kill you, will you guys let the matter rest and not deal with me? Shui Qianhuan, don't try to suppress me with the Shui family which has been decaying for 1,000 years. You won't be able to suppress me. Not to mention you, Even if the Shui family head were to make a personal appearance, I wouldn't be concerned. Ling Tian smiled as he spoke in a confident tone. Looking at Shui Qianhuan, who was trembling with anger, he continued, "Why not tell me what you are relying on? Why not tell me why you dare to come here alone and be certain that I wouldn't kill you? These are the things that I am interested in. As for your courage, steadiness and natural demeanor, they are not worth a far to me. The only reason why I am not going to kill you is that I do not feel that it is time yet. But if you were to truly anger me, do you think I wouldn't dare to kill you on the spot? Don't even think of putting up an act in front of me. Shui Qianhuan, in terms of acting, you are far too inadequate, especially when you are trying to put up an act in front of someone far stronger than you." Shui Qianhuan took in a large breath as he suppressed the anger in his heart and the urge to fly into a rage. "Ling Tian, where is my younger sister? I want to see her now." Ling Tian leaned back into the chair and raised his teacup. Without even looking at Shui Qianhuan, he replied, "Shui Qianhuan, be careful with your words. Why are you asking me about your missing sister? Am I your brother-in-law?" "You." Shui Qianhuan's breathing became ragged as his eyes gleamed with a sinister light. With a mellow tone, he said, "Ling Tian, she is my only younger sister and is the precious princess of the whole family. If anything untoward were to happen to her, Water of Heavenly Wind would definitely not let the matter rest. We would definitely wipe out the party that harmed her. You have to consider your words carefully before giving me a reply." Ling Tian lifted his head up slowly as a frosty light shot out from his eyes. "Originally, I would have been happy to tell you who harmed her, but I have changed my mind. Shui Qianhuan, you should know that I only have a single father. My birth father. If anyone dares to harm my dad, I, Ling Tian, will be enemies with him as well. I will not rest until they are destroyed. I will definitely repay my enemies twofold." Both of their fierce gazes collided with each other as though sparks were about to be ignited. As Ling Yan glared at Shui Qianhuan, he took a step forward. "Also, do not bring out your young noble heirs in front of me. This is no more than a joke to me and will only make me look down on you. Do you understand? Do you think your Shui family will have a reaction if I kill you now?" Shui Qianhuan's face turned completely red and he suddenly turned around. "Ling Tian, no matter what, my sister went missing in Sky Bearing. As the local snake of the area, it is impossible for you to be uninvolved in the matter. If I were to find out that you were the mastermind, not a single fowl or dog will be left alive in your Ling family. My words will end here, and I will be taking my leave." Ling Tian then snorted and said coldly, "You really know how to joke. Do you think my Ling residence is a place where you can come and go as you wish? Did I allow you to leave? Since you're here already, are you even thinking of leaving? My Ling family has always been extremely hospitable, and we would invite young noble Shui to stay for a few days so we can play host properly." Shui Qianhuan then chuckled, "Ling Tian, before I came to your courtyard, another two elders of mine were already on their way to visit old Madame Ling and Du Kling. Haha, before being certain of my little sister's whereabouts, I am not interested in becoming enemies with the Ling family yet. But if I do not leave this place after the designated time, it would be difficult for me to ensure that the two elders do not make a rash move. At that time, it wouldn't be good for either of us. Ling Tian, if you still want to play host to this young noble, you may carry on doing so." Chapter 341, So-Called Truth. Ling Tian let out a cold smile as he replied, "Like I said, young noble Shui is really good at joking. If my grandparents were really being paid a visit by your elders of the Shui family, then now that you're in my hands, wouldn't that even out matters? We're at least considered of the same position, so if I just let you walk away like that, then wouldn't I be laughed at for not being able to even take care of a guest? However, I didn't think that the famed Water of Heavenly Wind would actually stoop so such a base method. This has really opened my eyes." Shui Qianhuan didn't expect that Ling Tian was actually not threatened by him, and couldn't help but feel a little frantic. He retreated 2 steps hastily, and tore off all sense of pretense, putting up a strong front as he harshly spoke. "I've heard that Ling Tian had the heart of an evil tyrant, and indeed the rumors were true. Since you don't even place the safety of your grandparents at heart, then I, Shui Qianhuan, will not have anything to say even if I die by your hand. Just do it." He actually then closed his eyes, putting on an expression as though he viewed death as just another matter in his life. Seeing the reaction of Shui Qianhuan, Ling Tian also let out a cold smile. "What kind of hero are you trying to be? Since you've already approached me, don't even talk about heroism. Even if you're a hero in reality, I'll make sure your name becomes synonymous with coward." As he stepped forward, about to take Shui Qianhuan into his hands, he suddenly developed a thought. For Shui Qianhuan to send himself up today, is this not a heaven-sent opportunity? He could definitely take advantage of this. While Shui Qianhuan spoke with a tone of finality, it was merely trying to prolong the inevitable. How could he not be able to feel the killing intent Ling Tian directed towards him? However, he could only scream internally in frustration. To think that this fellow was not affected by both hard and soft methods, disregarding any consequences that might happen. How could he solve this now? If he were to admit defeat, then he would lose all face, but if he were to continue, then chances are he would still end up being the unlucky one. Just as he was weighing his options, he suddenly felt the killing intent that was originally suffocating him disappear, and he opened his eyes in confusion. In front of him was Ling Tian, who stared gravely at him for a while, before suddenly laughing out, "Good guts. You indeed live up to your name as the successor for Water of Heavenly Wind." Ling Tian today had his eyes opened up to the world. "Respect, much respect. Since young noble has other things to do, then it wouldn't do for me to continue keeping you. May we meet again then?" Shui Qianhuan opened his eyes and stared in confusion, with an expression of disbelief. He could no longer care about having the demeanor of a disciple of an aristocratic house and started to scratch his head in confusion. It took him a while to stutter out, "Are you not afraid that I would send down the order?" Ling Tian then quirked his mouth in disdain. "My dear young noble Shui, I've just praised you for being so open about death, but now you're already making me regret my words. You're truly too naive. If my grandparents were in your hands like you said, you would have definitely brought them in front of me before attempting to negotiate with me. Would there be a need for you to personally enter my Ling residence? Shui Qianhuan, with this pig head of yours, just how did Wei Chengping have the confidence to hand over his 400,000 soldiers? No wonder the 400,000 Northern Wei army suffered such a miserable defeat. How pathetic." Ling Tian lamented as though he deeply regretted the loss of the Northern Wei army. Shui Qianhuan felt his face turn red. "Ling Tian? If not for Han Taizhuan changing sides at the last minute to cause my army to suffer from a pincer attack, those 20,000 soldiers of yours would only be enough to tickle us. It would be a problem for you to even keep your lives, and it would be impossible for you to defeat my army. You would definitely be the final loser." Ling Tian looked at Shui Qianhuan as though he was staring at an idiot and burst out into laughter. Pointing at Shui Qianhuan with his finger, he laughed until his side started to ache. "What are you laughing about? Did I say anything wrong?" Shui Qianhuan felt uncomfortable from Ling Tian's laughter and couldn't help but ask. "Ha ha ha ha. Shui Qianhuan, I finally know that your defeat is not unjustified. You are actually such a fool. Up until now, you still don't know just how you lost and who you lost to. Ha ha ha. What a joke. I can't believe that such an idiot can be the successor of the Water of Heavenly Wind. It would be a wonder if you didn't suffer a loss." Shui Qianhuan's face turned completely pale from Ling Tian's mockery, and he couldn't help but want to strangle Ling Tian to death. "What do you mean by that? Don't try to fool me with words. If you cannot make yourself clear, I will fight you to the death." Shui Qianhuan began gasping for air. Ever since he was born, he had never been looked down upon by others. Now that Ling Tian treated him like dirt, he felt his chest tighten and his heart exploding. However, hearing that there seemed to be a hidden meaning behind Ling Tian's words, he still suppressed his anger and questioned Ling Tian. Your defeat was determined from the time you sent out your army. Ling Tian finally managed to stop himself from laughing. However, why should I be the one to teach you about your loss? Shouldn't that be the job of your elders? Or perhaps, what can you give me in exchange for my teachings? Right, I forgot that you are completely penniless now. Since this young noble has already benevolently let you off, you are better off running away with your tails between your legs. You still dare to try and fish for information from me? Do you really think that this young noble is a fool? Ling Tian. You. Shui Qianhuan almost went crazy from his anger. However, this was a matter that had troubled him over the past few days. He had always been proud of his military strategies and was certain that he was a top-notch military commander. Ever since he had arrived in the Heavenly Star continent, he was able to control the winds and storm with just a flip of his hands and had easily pieced together an alliance of the three empires. Just when he was feeling extremely proud of himself, the tides of the battle changed completely and he suffered such a miserable defeat before he even had the chance to consider his next move. In just a mere few hours, the battle was lost, and the elites that he had brought with him were almost wiped out. Such a disastrous blow was something that was unbearable to the proud Shui Qianhuan. He had been frustrated to the point he wanted to commit suicide. For him to personally enter the Ling residence to ask Ling Tian about his sister's whereabouts was a subconscious suicidal move of his. Hearing what Ling Tian had just said, he suddenly realized that there must have been an inside story to his defeat and couldn't help but be energized. This information was far too important to him. Thus, he clenched his teeth and said, "What are the conditions that young noble Ling requires for you to enlighten me on this matter? I really want to know the reason for my defeat." Ling Tian twiddled with the teacup in his hand and said with a calm tone, "The water of heavenly wind is naturally extremely powerful and not an existence that I can afford to provoke. I hope that young noble Shui can ensure that your Shui family will not deal with the Ling family when they are here in the Heavenly Star continent in future." That should be a simple condition, right? This is impossible. Shui Qianhuan rejected without hesitation. You first harmed my sister and killed a dozen of my Shui family experts. Our enmity is already irreconcilable. Ling Tian responded with a sigh. Shui Qianhuan, you have to be clear. I didn't harm your sister. The harm your sister suffered has nothing to do with me. You had better not attempt to frame me for this matter, and I will only explain myself once. If your water of heavenly wind chooses to be unreasonable, then I am not one to be afraid of trouble. Since I am able to create trouble, I would naturally be unafraid of trouble. However, I will never become the scapegoat of others." As he said that, Ling Tian added on in his own heart, "I really didn't harm your sister. I only captured her after she had been harmed by someone else. That is really the truth." Hearing what Ling Tian had said, Shui Qianhuan couldn't help but calm down a little. He could tell that Ling Tian wasn't lying. Furthermore, since he was now in the Ling residence, if Ling Tian was the true culprit, Ling Tian could just capture him as well. There was no need for Ling Tian to lie to him at all. It seems that my sister's disappearance really wasn't because of him. But if it wasn't because of him, in the whole Heavenly Star continent, who would have the courage and strength? It seemed as though there could only be one answer. Seeing the changes on Shui Qianhuan's face, Ling Tian couldn't help but snicker in his heart. As for the deaths of your Shui family experts, the battlefield is a place where it is either your death or mine. Why are you complaining about their deaths now? Their deaths can only be attributed to their lack of strength. Don't tell me that only you guys are allowed to kill and everyone else must stretch out their necks for you to slaughter them. Ridiculous. Forming an enmity because of this? Don't you think your unreasonable attitude is a joke? Who was the one who started the war in the first place? To think you still have the cheek to talk about revenge." Shui Qianhuan's face turned bright red and he knew that he was in the wrong. Thus, he quickly turned his head around and said with a chilly tone, "Even if that's the case, I can only promise you that our family will not purposefully seek trouble with your Ling family when they are in the Heavenly Star continent. But if they were to meet you on the battlefield, then life and death shall be determined by the heavens." Ling Tian rolled his eyes. "More rubbish. No matter what, I will definitely not say that I am the only one allowed to kill others, and they can only stretch out their necks for me to slaughter. I will also not expect your Shui family members to turn tail and run the moment they see my Ling family, although that is indeed your Shui family's outstanding tradition." Ling Tian was obviously ridiculing Shui Qianhuan for escaping after his defeat. Shui Qianhuan's face slowly turned purple as he glared at Ling Tian. "Can young noble Ling spill the beans now? If not, I don't have the time to waste with you." The more he interacted with Ling Tian, the more he felt helpless. Especially the fact that Ling Tian's sarcastic remarks made him feel as though he had a foot in the grave. Even when being reprimanded by the elders of his family, Shui Qianhuan never felt this pathetic before. Shui Qianhuan really didn't want to stay for a moment longer. Ling Tian burst out into laughter and suddenly lowered his voice and whispered into Shui Qianhuan's ears. As Shui Qianhuan saw how serious Ling Tian was, he couldn't help but turn serious as well. "Han Taizhuan from Western Han is a member of the Yu family. As for your sister, I cannot tell any lies, I cannot tell any lies." "Sigh." Shui Qianhuan took in a breath of cold air as his eyes widened. "No wonder Ling Tian said that my defeat was determined the moment I sent out my army. No wonder why Han Taizhuan would change sides without any warning. No wonder why my sister would go missing in Sky Bearing." Chapter 342, Crazy. CEI. Shui Qianhuan took in a breath of cold air as his eyes turned as wide as saucers. No wonder Ling Tian said that his defeat was already determined the moment he sent out his troops. No wonder Han Taizhuan would suddenly change sides without any warning. No wonder his own sister would go missing in Sky Bearing. Yu family, what a good Yu family. You indeed lived up to the name of being our 1,000-year-old nemesis. Han Taizhuan changing sides suddenly was something that was completely out of Shui Qianhuan's expectations and also the biggest reason for the Northern Wei's defeat. Shui Qianhuan only came to a realization at this moment. However, Shui Qianhuan had thought too far and thought that his sister's disappearance was due to the Yu family as well. Indeed, apart from Ling Tian, only the Yu family would have the ability to capture Shui Qianhuan in the Heavenly Star continent. If the Yu family wasn't the one who captured Shui Qianhuan, who else could it be? Furthermore, the Yu family had always been their greatest enemy for the past 1,000 years. After hearing what Ling Tian said, Shui Qianhuan began gnashing his teeth in anger as a ferocious glare shot out from his eyes. Ling Tian then shook his head as he stood up. "Water of heavenly wind, jade of heavenly star, ha ha ha, no matter how powerful the water of heavenly wind is, your Shui family is at the very most equal to the Yu family. Don't forget, this is the Heavenly Star continent. Hee, if we were to use these two matters as an example, even if you knew that the Yu family was the culprit, do you have any evidence? Are you going to try and plot against the Yu family like how you did against the Ling family without any reason? It doesn't seem like an easy matter. Even if you have the heart to do so, do you have the courage? Do you have the ability?" Ling Tian's tone was filled with mockery and ridicule. But it was also because of his tone that Shui Qianhuan's suspicions towards Ling Tian disappeared. Shui Qianhuan suddenly stood up straight with a solemn expression and clapped his palms. "Thank you, young noble, for enlightening me. Qianhuan will definitely repay the Ling family for our previous offenses. Goodbye." Now that Shui Qianhuan's attention was fully directed towards dealing with the Yu family, he wanted to mend his relationship with the Ling family. After all, no matter how powerful their Shui family was, the Heavenly Star continent was still foreign ground, and it was impossible for them to fight two enemies in the land where the Yu family had their roots. Especially after seeing the unfathomable Ling Tian the other day, Shui Qianhuan was already terrified of him and definitely didn't want to provoke this devil. Shui Qianhuan had already come to the conclusion that he was no longer able to control the situation, and he couldn't make such a huge decision either. The only option left for him would be to contact his Shui family for them to send more men over. Of course, it would be the best if they could deal with the Yu family together with Ling Tian. However, Shui Qianhuan let out a long sigh as he regretted his choice of making a move towards the Ling family. From Ling Tian's performance today, it was obvious that he wasn't on the same side as the Yu family yet. Just like the saying goes, an enemy's enemy is my friend, but he had lost such a huge ally because he tried to act smart. Seeing how Shui Qianhuan was about to leave, Ling Tian almost burst out into laughter. He naturally understood what Shui Qianhuan's plans were. However, now that both their families had just fought each other, it was impossible for either of them to have the cheek to suggest an alliance. While Ling Tian was thick-skinned enough to ask for an alliance, he wasn't too concerned about the alliance. The most important thing would be for everything to turn out fine in the end. However, if this matter were to spread out, not to mention anyone else, even his own father would skin him alive. I shall make my plans before making a decision. Ling Tian comforted himself in his heart as he walked out of the room. As he remembered that Ling Chen was currently mentoring Yu Bingyan in painting, he wanted to go and take a look at her progress. Just when he had left the room, he saw a servant sprinting towards him. Seeing the panting servant, Ling Tian couldn't help but frown as he looked at the servant approaching him. Young noble, cough cough. Long Xiang. His Majesty is crazy, the servant said in a breathless fashion. Ever since Ling Tian had returned, old Madame Ling gave a strict order to report everything in the Ling residence to Ling Tian at the first moment. This was for her own personal benefit, as she and her husband had been arguing incessantly over Long Xiang's matters for the past few days, and she was also afraid that their daughter might make a foolish move. Thus, she gave such an order in light of the fact that her grandson had many ingenious plans. The moment something was to happen, he would definitely be able to solve the problem with his unusual ideas. Thus, the servant keeping watch on Long Xiang immediately reported the matter to Ling Tian when he realized something was wrong. Crazy? Ling Tian's brows furrowed. This fellow didn't go crazy any earlier or later, but right when my father and I returned home? Deem it, isn't his timing too accurate? Yes, he is going crazy. The servant finally caught his breath as he said anxiously, this servant was afraid that something might go wrong, so I check on him a few times every day. When I saw him in the morning, his long hair was soaked in a pile of his own excrement and he was mumbling to himself with his face in a daze. He should probably be crazy already. As the servant said that, he observed Ling Tian's expression and couldn't help but be terrified. To think that Long Xiang would go crazy while he was on duty. Just what kind of bad luck did he have? While Long Xiang was only a captive, he was still Ling Ran's husband and the young noble's uncle-in-law. Lead the way, I will go and take a look. Ling Tian replied calmly. The servant quickly acknowledged that order as he gave a sigh of relief. When they were still a ways off, Ling Tian could already smell an odor that attacked his nose. He had always liked cleanliness and couldn't help but frown. Without stopping, he quickly arrived outside the cell door and looked in from the window. He then saw Long Xiang's hair in a mess with some white and yellow substance smeared in it. His hands were also dirty, with a dazed expression on his face. He no longer had the prestige of a ruler, and his usually serious expression was replaced with a juvenile look as he sang and hopped around in the stone room. A cold sneer could then be seen on Ling Tian's face as he commanded, "Men, bring a few buckets of water and clean him up. He is the ruler of an empire after all." With a command, The trembling servants flew into action immediately and quickly returned with buckets of water. Ling Tian then kicked the stone door open and took 2 steps back. He then pointed and shouted, "Splash!" A bucket of water was then splashed all over Long Xiong and he was drenched from head to toe. Long Xiong then shivered for a moment but quickly regained his crazy appearance. As though he didn't see a thing, Ling Tian continued to order buckets of water to be splashed on Long Xiong. In just a short 5 minutes, over a dozen buckets were splashed on Long Xiong and the whole stone room was completely soaked in water. Raising his hands, Ling Tian stopped his servants from splashing water and commanded them to sweep the excess water out before walking into the room slowly. While the room was still damp, it no longer had a stench. Ling Tian then gave a calm command, "Wait outside and don't let anyone within 50 feet of this place. Those who defy me will be executed." The servants all trembled slightly and quickly acknowledged the order. Ling Tian paced around the room once as he looked at Long Xiong with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. "What good acting, you really have some talent. You really shouldn't be an emperor. If you go and work in an opera house, you can definitely make a good living." Long Xiong looked at Ling Tian with a vacant expression as though he had never seen a live person before. Then, he turned around and began to hum a tune as he danced to it. After wiping the bottom of his feet with his finger, he stuck his finger into his nose and sniffed on it. Following that, he began sucking on the finger as though he was enjoying a fabulous delicacy. Ling Tian looked at Long Xiong's actions with interest before saying with a deep tone, "You originally planned to get rid of my Ling family with the aid of the water of Heavenly Wind and Northern Way, restoring the authority of your Long family in sky-bearing. Even if you were to sacrifice some immediate benefits, it would be in exchange for the authority of unprecedented authority. With the support of the Yang family and their enmity with the Ling family, all the stars would be aligned and the pieces of the puzzle would all be in place. Thinking that everything was under your control, you decided to scheme against the Ling family. However, you were unaware that everything you saw and knew were no more than lies." Long Xiong acted as though he didn't understand what Ling Tian said and acted as though he wasn't even listening to Ling Tian. After rubbing his finger on his body, a black ball of mud could be seen on his finger. With a wide smile, he dumped it into his mouth and sucked on it happily before swallowing it. At the same time, he mumbled to himself, "I want to eat candy, I want to eat candy. Whoa. Nice candy." Ling Tian ignored him and continued, "However, you never thought that this flawless plan of yours had failed when you thought that the Ling family no longer had anything to rely on. Although you are already a prisoner now, you are actually not afraid in the slightest. You know that your parents-in-law, wife, and daughter are in the Ling family. Furthermore, the Ling family has always been merciful and would definitely show you some mercy. You are even daydreaming about the fact that with the Yang family eradicated, our Ling family might even return you to the throne if you gave us good enough benefits. You should have such thoughts. However, when my father returned safely yesterday, you were truly afraid. You have harmed him too deeply. Less than 15,000 soldiers returned from his 100,000-strong army. You have betrayed his trust with your unscrupulous means, and my father already hates you to the core, wanting to execute you to appease his anger. If not for the fact that he was injured and stopped by my grandfather, together with the pleading of my aunt, you would have been turned into a corpse by now. However, you also saw that even my grandfather and aunt's appearance wasn't enough to appease the anger of my father. Thus, you were really afraid that you would die in the hands of my father, right?" Ling Tian slowly analyzed the situation, but Long Xiong's eyes were not looking at Ling Tian. Long Xiong was still dancing around as though he was mimicking the moves of a fairy dancing. He then suddenly sat on the floor as he tried to lift up his feet and send his toes into his mouth. However, with his stiff body, how was it possible for him to do that? Then, he began rolling on the floor as he cried out in an incoherent manner. Chapter 343, Turning Lies into Reality. Ling Tian couldn't be bothered with Long Xiang's reaction and continued speaking. The moment you felt that your wife and daughter were unable to protect you, you chose another plan, feign craziness. I have to admit that this is a good plan. The moment you go crazy, my father will not be able to kill a crazy man no matter how enraged he is. Furthermore, your wife and child are living in the Ling residence and you surely won't starve to death. As long as you can continue living, you will be able to wait for a chance to rise up again. You will probably find your chance with my aunt. Haha, a single day of marriage brings 100 days of favor, not to mention the fact that you guys were married for more than 10 years. You know that my aunt is soft-hearted and extremely reliant on you. Thus, she would be the only chance for you to rise up again. Furthermore, your acting is indeed extremely convincing and even I am unable to find fault with it. Ling Tian then let out a sigh of praise. Good plan. What a good plan. Especially the fact that you would ignore your status and engage in such filthy acts. No one would even think that it is all an act. No one would believe that the monarch of an empire would resort to such means just to survive. Even I am unable to see any flaws in your acting and can only suspect you. This plan of yours is just too GDDM and good. Ling Tian chuckled. However, regardless of whether or not you are truly crazy, a single trace of suspicion is enough for me. Furthermore, there is something that is not within your plans. Do you know what that is? What is it? Long Xiang was no longer his crazy self as he looked towards Ling Tian with a face full of despair. Ling Tian ignored him from the start to the end and only calmly analyzed the situation. However, each and every single word Ling Tian said had struck the deepest corners of his heart, making it impossible for him to continue feigning craziness. Since Ling Tian had already seen through his act, what was the point for him to continue it? It was no more than a joke if he were to continue his act. The Ling family still has me. Ling Tian pointed at himself before continuing, talking about acting. I am far more experienced than you. Let me tell you something, this young noble has been acting ever since I was in my mother's womb. How did you think I got the title of the #1 silk pants in sky daring? You actually dare to put up an act in front of me? No matter how realistic your act is or how entertaining it is no different from trying to flaunt the Analects in front of Confucius. You are no more than a Manchurian peasant trying to flaunt your acting skills in front of an Oscar actor. What a joke. Ling Tian said with a merciless tone. Long Xiang naturally didn't know what a Manchurian peasant referred to and definitely didn't know the meaning of an Oscar actor. He only remained silent as he gnashed his teeth in dismay. However, this act of yours reminded me of another thing. Ling Tian paced around the room with a relaxed expression as though one of his huge problems was just solved. I was originally frustrated about how I should take care of you. Kill you? Very sadly I can't. Release you? That's impossible. But if I can't kill or release you, am I going to imprison you for life? Furthermore, with Aunt present in the Ling family, you would have the chance to rise up again. However, I am not willing to take such a risk. Ha ha ha. Just when I was feeling frustrated, you chose to feign craziness. Ling Tian then leaned towards Long Xiang and whispered, You are a genius indeed. You solved my problem so easily. Ling Tian said with a bright and warm smile, with his white teeth on full display. However, in Long Xiang's eyes, Ling Tian was no different from a famished wolf looking at him with his mouth wide open. Long Xiang couldn't help but stammer, You. What do you want? Ling Tian had a delighted smile as he lowered his head and said patiently, Since you are so willing to put on a show, I will definitely fulfill your wish. Since you are already crazy, then I shall truly make you turn crazy. How about that? Ling Tian looked at Long Xiang with a sincere gaze as though asking for his opinion, while he placed a hand behind Long Xiang's head. I heard that there is a special part of the brain called the cortex located here. If the nerves within it are destroyed, An individual would become an idiot for life. Your idea is truly a brilliant one. Ha ha ha, let me give your brain a reward first. You can be assured that if your unborn child is going to be obedient, I will definitely take good care of him. But if he isn't going to be obedient, things will be very different. You have to know, the best habit I have is that I will uproot my enemies. However, on account of my aunt, I will not let him know that he has the surname of Long from the day he is born. This surname is truly disgusting, am I right? Unless he has also traveled here from another world, but the possibility of that seems small. Haha. While Long Xiang didn't know what the cortex or nerves were, he could feel that he was in trouble. Thus, he couldn't help but shout out in reflex, "Help me!" Before he could even scream out, he felt a shockwave at the back of his head and Ling Tian's inner chi rushed into his head. Ling Tian then walked out of the room at ease with a relaxed expression, as though he was back from a stroll in the garden. On the outside, a large crowd surrounded the place with old Madame Ling, Princess Jiayuan and Ling ran at the very front. Duke Ling was standing by the side and even his mother, Chu Tinger, was there. The moment they saw that Ling Tian was out, they all gathered forward quickly and asked, "How is he?" Ling Tian's expression was solemn as he shook his head without saying a single word. However, the expression on his face had already informed everyone of the outcome. With a putong sound, Ling Ran had knelt down in front of Ling Tian and hugged his leg tight. "Tanner, I know you can save him. I know you have that ability. Back when I was afflicted with poison, you were also capable of saving me. Your aunt pleads for you to please save him. Although his sins are unforgivable and he is despicable, he is still my husband. He is still your cousin's biological father. Tanner. Please save him? Please, please, please save him." As she said that, she began to kowtow to Ling Tian. Ling Tian quickly helped her up, and, "Aren't you trying to cut my lifespan short? Don't worry, as long as there is a trace of hope, our Ling family will not give up on curing him. I will send out a notice to invite all the famous physicians over to treat him. However, his illness is one of the heart and is different from aunt being poisoned. It is impossible for me to treat him with my inner chi. I hope you won't blame me." Ling Ran stood up blankly. As the daughter of the Ling family, she was naturally well learned and knew that what Ling Tian said was the truth. Thus, she fell into a daze as she felt her heart turning cold and lost the ability to think. As the others opened the door of the stone room, they saw a Long Xiang with lifeless eyes and a juvenile expression. He was laughing foolishly in a corner of the room with a string of shiny drool drooping down from the corner of his lips. Without a second look, everyone was certain that this sky-bearing former emperor was indeed crazy. It was impossible to feign that expression of his. Ling Ran and Princess Jiayu blacked out and they both collapsed on the floor unconscious. Everyone couldn't help but panic as they jabbed their philtrum to help the both of them regain consciousness. The moment both of them woke up, they burst out into tears. Ling Tian then let out a long sigh and said, "Send my orders to search for famous physicians all over the continent. No matter how much silver needs to be spent and where the physician is, he must be brought in front of me. Until they can treat Long Xiang." A servant by the side acknowledged Ling Tian's orders and quickly passed it down. At the same time, Ling Ran and Princess Jiayu also looked at Ling Tian with a gaze full of gratitude. Despite Long Xiang's unscrupulous schemes towards the Ling family, Ling Tian was still able to give such an order to help invite physicians to treat his illness regardless of the cost. Such an action of his was already considered extremely benevolent. However, they were unaware that Ling Tian's previous blow to Long Xiang's brain had rendered him incurable. Not to mention the physicians of this generation, even if the most famous doctors from his previous life were to be gathered, they would still be completely helpless. Even if someone were to cross through worlds and possess Long Xiang, he would still be an idiot for all eternity. After taking care of the problem of Long Xiang, Ling Tian felt at ease. However, he still felt a tinge of sorrow upon witnessing Ling Ran's heartbreak. While Long Xiong's sins were unforgivable and it could be said that he deserved the present outcome, Ling Ran's actions were without fault. No matter what, Long Xiong was still Ling Ran's man. The father of Ling Ran's child. This was something that would never change. On this point alone, perhaps all the women in the world would be alike. Ling Tian then let out a sigh as he thought about Ling Chen. If he was in Long Xiong's shoes, what would Ling Chen do? Perhaps she would be even crazier than his own aunt. Even if he was a living devil and the demon in everyone's eyes, Ling Chen was still his Ling Chen. Love was something that had no logic. Ling Tian then thought about how many gentle and beautiful women from his previous life had fallen in love with murderers, rapists, or even drug traffickers, making one sigh in pity. Did these women not know that the guy they were in love with was a criminal? Did they not have a trace of justice in their hearts? Definitely not. Under the spell of love, even if they knew that they were wrong, they would still stand against the world. In their hearts, they were not willing to let their beloved suffer from the slightest bit of injury. Women. Ling Tian sighed on his way back to his courtyard. Just when he finally sat down, news came from the courtyard. There seemed to be some problem with the surrendered soldiers and Shui Qian'er was demanding to see him. Ling Tian rubbed his temples and let out yet another sigh. Even though everything was supposed to be concluded and it was supposed to be time for his break, he seemed to be even busier than before. Ling Chen could naturally see what he was thinking about and said with a smile, "Young noble has more responsibilities because of your capabilities. If they were all as capable as young noble's talents wouldn't be able to stand out." Ling Tian looked at her beautiful face and couldn't help but be tempted again. Stroking her face gently, he said with a perverse smile, "Is this young noble really very capable? I think Chen'er should be the most familiar with that." Chapter 344, High Pressure. As a pure and innocent young lady, how would Ling Chen be able to understand Ling Tian's hidden meaning? Thus, she said with a sincere look, "Young noble is the most capable, of course. I haven't seen anyone more capable than young noble." Black lines couldn't help but be formed on Ling Tian's face as he smacked Ling Chen on her behind. "Nonsense. It would be a problem if you had seen others." Ling Chen squealed and curled up in Ling Tian's embrace. At the same time, she asked, "Why would it be a problem? In any case, Ling Chen really hasn't seen anyone more capable than young noble before. I am telling the truth." Ling Tian only responded with an awkward laugh and whispered something in Ling Chen's ears. The next moment, Ling Chen's face turned bright red as she hammered Ling Tian's chest and whined, "Young noble, you are too naughty." Ling Tian burst out into laughter and picked her up. At the same time, he nibbled on her ear and chuckled, "Since Chen'er has praised me for being capable, how would I be able to live up to your praise if I don't prove my capabilities once again?" As he said that, he walked towards his bedroom. Ling Chen let out an embarrassed shriek as she said softly, "Young noble, they are still waiting for you in the courtyard." Ling Tian then raised his eyebrows and said with an intimate tone, "Let them wait for a few hours then. I have to first let Ling Chen know just how capable her young noble is." Ling Chen quickly covered her face as she felt her whole body heat up. The people in the courtyard waited from the morning to the afternoon before finally seeing Ling Tian and Ling Chen arriving. It could be seen that young noble Ling was indeed extremely capable. Ling Tian sat on his horse and looked at the various commanders of the courtyard with a furious expression. "Feng Mo, what instructions did I give you the other time? What is going on with these surrendered soldiers? You actually have the guts to trouble me with it. I really overestimated your true abilities." The originally anxious Feng Mo turned completely pale from fright and he quickly bowed. "Young noble, let me make a report." After the initial period of fear, there were some of the surrendered soldiers who began to spread rumors that they were far away in a foreign land and extremely afraid. Due to them missing their homeland, there were even some who made use of the opportunity to create trouble. Our men are far inferior in numbers, and the surrendered soldiers outnumber us far too greatly. When the men of the courtyard attempted to discipline them, they even broke out into fights. Now, the morale in the courtyard is extremely low, and we think that if we were to use ironclad methods to suppress them, even if the surrendered soldiers don't have weapons, they are far too numerous. As he said that, he lifted his head to take a peek at Ling Tian's expression. Upon seeing Ling Tian's expression, his heart turned cold and didn't dare to continue his explanation. "That's all?" Ling Tian's face was filled with dark clouds and he looked as though he was about to erupt at any moment. "All of you are capable indeed, being stumped by these trash. All of them are surrendered troops from the start and not our own personal troops. Furthermore, they are all adults with their own thoughts. Feng Mo, for you to treat them like our own personal troops, I don't know if you are an idiot or fool. You have really let me down," Ling Tian said seriously. Facing Ling Tian's reprimand, Feng Mo's face turned completely pale, and he didn't even dare to breathe. Ling Tian then got off the horse and said as he walked, "We don't have much time left. From the very start, I never thought of converting all 120,000 of these soldiers over to become our personal soldiers. Furthermore, I don't have the time or energy to slowly convert them. If anyone were to have such an idea, they would be a complete idiot. The only thing we can do now is to suppress them with ironclad means. That would be the most effective." Ling Tian suddenly turned and looked at Feng Mo with a sharp gaze. "In my original estimates, 60,000 of them submitting would already be a good outcome. Feng Mo, let me ask you, do you know what will happen to the other 60,000? Beads of sweat rolled down from Feng Mo's face profusely, but he didn't dare to wipe it off. This subordinate doesn't know. Young noble probably has other arrangements for them." "Other arrangements?" Ling Tian let out a sneer. "Let me tell you clearly, those 60,000 soldiers would be used to establish our prestige." Ah! At this moment, all the commanders present couldn't help but gasp in shock. Establish our prestige. In other words, the fate of the 60,000 soldiers would be death. Killing 60,000 soldiers to establish prestige. How many people would be able to do so? This was something unimaginable. If they were on the battlefield fighting to the death, not to mention 60,000 soldiers, even the deaths of 200,000 soldiers would be a common affair. However, the soldiers had already surrendered, and it was unacceptable for them to massacre the unarmed captives. The general in charge of this operation would definitely be labeled as a cruel and bloodthirsty general for generations to come. Ever since the ancient times, there are a few huge requirements for using surrendered soldiers. Ling Tian said slowly. First, to ensure that they don't betray us on the battlefield. Second, to guard against a mutiny. Third, they can only be sent to fight small skirmishes and not fierce battles. Fourth, they can't be sent to face their mother nation. So, dealing with surrendered soldiers has always been the greatest headache for all generals. Everyone nodded their heads as they thought in their heart, since you understand such logic, why did you bother bringing them back? How would they be easy to handle? But in my hands, there wouldn't be a huge problem. At the very least, I wouldn't be troubled like the other generals. Ling Tian said with a profound gaze. The other generals had been far too benevolent or old-fashioned. Despite wanting to use these men, they still had to guard against them. Furthermore, they still had to act benevolent and righteous, pretending to use their sincerity to touch the hearts of these soldiers to convert them fully. This was no more than a whore wanting to erect a memorial arch for herself. Ling Tian sneered with disdain. They were far too foolish. The surrendered soldiers have been brainwashed since they were young, and it is impossible to reverse that brainwashing in a mere few days or months. The only way to deal with them would be to use violence. Absolute bloodthirsty violence. A special form of violence mixed with powerful means and special plans. That would be the only effective method. Bloodthirsty violence? A special form of violence mixed with powerful means and special plans? Everyone couldn't help but look at Ling Tian with confusion. Especially the experienced generals who had been on the battlefield for many years. They all couldn't help but perk their ears up expectantly. Ling Tian couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Ling Tian knew from the start that it wouldn't be an easy matter to convert these soldiers to become his own. In the fantasy novels that he had read from his past life, the protagonist would only have to unleash his might and prestige, followed by enticing them with benefits and a touching speech. The surrendered soldiers would all then kneel down before him and plead to pledge their allegiance to the protagonist. However, that was no more than a dream. Even if you wanted to try converting a surrendered soldier for 10 years, as long as he had a weapon in his hands, he could immediately turn around to kill the commander in charge of converting him. Ling Tian then turned around to face the various military commanders of the courtyard. This will be the arrangements for the surrendered soldiers. 10 people will form a section, 100 will form a platoon and 1,000 will form a company. 10,000 men will form a battalion. The section commander, platoon commander, company commander and battalion commander will be arranged by men from the courtyard. Hearing these words, everyone couldn't help but be elated. However, Ling Tian's following words turned all of their faces pale. Ling Tian then continued, in a section, if a single individual wants to escape or cause chaos, execute the whole section. In a platoon, if there are more than 2 sections with offenders, the whole platoon will be executed. In a company, if there are more than 2 platoons with offenders, the company commander will be demoted to become an ordinary soldier and that company will be executed. From today on, Ling Tian will lead the first pavilion to be the enforcement hall. All of you can decide if there is a need to increase manpower and have the authority to arrange their jobs. There is no need to report anything to me. All of you can make your own decisions. If there are any offenders, they will be executed. There will be no exceptions. Anyone who doesn't listen to commands, attempts to escape, slack off on training, stir up trouble, will be executed. There will be no exceptions, kill without mercy. Ling Tian listed out more than 10 reasons for execution and everyone present couldn't help but turn pale. Ling Tian, did you hear me clearly? Ling Tian asked casually. Yes, young noble. As though he wanted to say something else, he looked at Ling Tian with hesitation. After a short while, he finally said what he wanted. Young noble, I am not very familiar with these things, I'm afraid. Ling Tian smiled, you don't have to be familiar. You only need to know how to do one thing. You only need to know how to kill. Everyone couldn't help but tremble with fear. These simple words of Ling Tian were enough to bathe the Ling family courtyard in a river of blood. With these simple words, thousands of people would die under Ling Tian's sword. Kill without mercy. What a frightening 3 words. They finally understood the true deterrent effect of these words. After walking a short distance, Ling Tian suddenly turned around and said with a smile, 60,000 usable soldiers out of the 120,000 soldiers would be a good outcome. Since they are soldiers that have fallen down from the skies, if there is a need, I would be satisfied if only 30,000 elite soldiers were left behind. A benevolent individual can't lead soldiers. The blood of a man must be like iron. Since you have decided to walk down this path, you can't turn your head back again. Ling Tian said this with a calm smile as his white robes fluttered in the wind. As everyone present heard these words, they couldn't help but cower in fear. Ling Tian then waved his hands to Ling Chen and indicated for her to follow him. Alright, all of you can go back to what you guys were doing. By tomorrow before daybreak, I want to see all the surrendered soldiers sorted neatly. If I need to take care of anything else, then. Ling Tian's razor-sharp gaze landed on everyone. All of you can scram. Including Ling Tian and your first pavilion. Even when Ling Tian had left them, the commanders present still stood up straight respectfully. Ling Tian's words had shocked the many experienced soldiers thoroughly. With his bloody methods, no matter how rowdy the surrendered soldiers were, they would probably become docile lambs. although the methods were indeed too cruel. Chapter 345, Negotiation. Ling Tian walked into the stone room and asked the two guards in charge of guarding Shui Qian'er, "How has Miss Shui been?" "Good, she is good." While Ling Tian was asking about Shui Qian'er's physical condition, he never expected the two guards to reveal such a bitter and pitiful look. Seeing their unsightly expressions, Ling Tian couldn't help but ask, "What happened?" The burly man was startled, and he began to stutter, "Nothing." "Eh? Nothing?" Ling Tian frowned. "Speak. I want to know every detail." Both the guards were shocked and quickly recounted everything. As Ling Tian heard what they said, his frown became tighter and tighter. It turned out that the injuries to Shui Qian'er's body weren't very serious and only her internal injuries were serious. However, her internal injuries had already been meticulously treated by Ling Tian. Together with her almost Xiantian cultivation, her recovery rate was naturally speedy. In just a short while, her injuries were almost fully recovered. But following her full recovery, the days of the guards gradually grew bitter. Miss Shui's requests were all spoken as though her requests were requirements. "Didn't your young noble Ling say to take good care of me? As a woman, cleanliness is naturally important to me, and I have to take a bath. Bring a bathtub and fill it up with warm water. After taking my bath, I will naturally need a fresh set of clothes, right? I also want to change my undergarments. How can a woman not have some makeup? How can there be no mirror or dressing table in my room? How can there be no comb? How can?" As her body gradually recovered, she had more and more requests, and her tone became more and more forceful as though her requests were fully justified. Thus, all of the guards became extremely busy as they let out bitter cries. If it was just ordinary tasks, they wouldn't have too many complaints. However, a woman's undergarment was a large taboo for a male in the ancient times. It can be imagined just how awkward it would be for a few burly men to go out and purchase women's undergarments. The root of this problem was a single instruction which Ling Tian gave before leaving: "As long as you don't let her out, you can fulfill all of her requests. More importantly, you must take good care of her injuries." At that time, Ling Tian already treated Shui Qian'er as an important chip to bargain with the Shui family. How would he allow any harm to fall upon her? Furthermore, Ling Tian had always felt a strong sense of threat from the Yu family, and he did have the thought of forming an alliance with the Shui family or even to reap benefits from the fight between the Yu and Shui families. Of course, all of this was conditional on the fact that his father would be able to return safely. If his father couldn't return safely, there would be no room for negotiations. After this battle, while Ling Tian achieved a great victory and had abundant rewards, he felt more and more worried in his heart. The strength of the Yu family was powerful to the point that Ling Tian was shocked. Just a single general of Western Han grasped a third of the Western Han army. If that's the case, then there was no doubt that the Yu family definitely had spies in the Northern Wei army. However, what about the Eastern Zhou? The Wu Empire? The Southern Jing? Or even his sky-bearing empire? Thinking about that, Ling Tian couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. The strength of the 1,000-year-old Yu family was far beyond his expectations. He had underestimated them far too much. Ever since his return, Ling Tian had been pondering over this problem. Both the Yu and Shui families would definitely be his greatest barrier to ruling the world. Currently, he couldn't let go of his relationship with anyone from either family, but he also couldn't grow too close to them. If not, he would definitely suffer the attacks of the other family. While Ling Tian was confident that he didn't need to fear any one of the two families, he didn't want to suffer from any unnecessary losses. The best plan would be for him to sit on the fence, having a peaceful relationship with the Yu family and not rejecting the Shui family either. However, he couldn't participate in the battle between the families. As time passed, both of these ambitious families would definitely end up in a full-on conflict with each other. At that time, as long as he could make good use of that opportunity, Ling Tian began to formulate a plan in his heart. However, such an outcome would only be possible if both the Shui and Yu families played along. If not, he would only become a sacrificial lamb in the war between both families. Especially with how his present relationship with the Shui family was extremely tense, it was impossible to tell how their relationship would develop in future. As he came to the Ling family courtyard to meet Shui Qianru today, he was considering the possibility of his plan being successful. Thus, he intended to first test Shui Qianru's attitude first before deciding his future plans. But upon finding out about Shui Qianru's odd actions in the previous few days, Ling Tian couldn't help but frown. Just what is this lass thinking about? After thinking for a long while, Ling Tian shook his head and said, "Open the door." "Ms. Shui, you seem to be looking healthier than before. Are you used to your stay here? It seems like my Ling family's delicacies are really to your liking." Ling Tian said with a chuckle, looking at Mrs. Tender appearance, "I really feel like taking a bite to have a taste." "Really? Then does the young noble Ling want a bite?" Shui Qianru was dressed in a purple dress. While she was seated down silently, she exuded a graceful and charming bearing with a trace of stubbornness on her face. While her words were extremely playful, her tone was extremely cold. No, Ling Tian shook his head obediently and said with a righteous tone, "My teeth aren't so good and I may end up cracking them. At that time, I wouldn't be able to enjoy any more delicacies." "Really?" Shui Qianru clenched her teeth and said, looking at young noble Ling's radiant appearance, "You probably achieved a great victory on the battlefield, right?" With Mrs. Blessing, Ling Tian said with a wide smile, "I won a small battle and it is nothing to brag about." "Is your father okay?" Shui Qianru said with a simmering temper. With Mrs. Blessing, "My father is extremely healthy." Ling Tian walked once around the room before taking a seat. Ling Chen then stood behind Ling Tian as usual. Shui Qianru suddenly flew into a rage. "Since your father is alright, then why isn't young noble Ling letting us out?" Ling Tian ruffled his hair, "Please forgive me for my poor memory. When did I say that I was going to let the both of you out?" Deer, who was by the side, began to pout. "How can you be like that, not upholding your promises? Who was it who said, 'If not for the fact that this concerns my father's safety, I wouldn't be willing to become enemies with Miss'? Now that your father is alright, you're still holding us captive. How shameless. You." She originally intended to continue mocking Ling Tian, but her mouth was immediately sealed by Ling Tian's sharp gaze. Ever since she was slapped and scolded by Ling Tian, this little lass was truly afraid of him. Ling Tian only responded with a perfunctory tone, "Did I say that before? With my bad memory, perhaps I really said that." However, it seems like only both you master and servant pair were present at that time. "No matter what, you guys hold the advantage in numbers and I may have been coerced at that time. With the power of the Shui family, how would a small family like my Ling family dare to provoke you? Even a lass dares to scold the host, and the prestige of your Shui family can be seen." The thickness of Ling Tian's skin was indeed unprecedented. Shui Qianru didn't bother to quibble with him and said with a snicker, "Justice is in the heart of everyone. How would you be able to rule the world without trustworthiness? Since young noble said that he didn't say it, we will just take it that young noble didn't say it. However, how long does the young noble Ling plan to play host to us? We have left our home for a long time and even if the Ling residents can treat us like family, we still miss our home. Can young noble please give us an exact time?" Ling Tian responded with a sneer, "I thought that only your brother knew how to joke but never expected Miss to be even more humorous. With Mrs. Status, you can naturally stay for as long as you want. However, even if you don't want to stay here any longer, you should still seek the approval of the host, right? This host hopes that I can have both of you here for a good 3 to 7 years." Shui Qianru's gaze turned cold immediately. Young noble Ling, let us all be open with each other. Don't forget that you are holding someone from the Shui family captive. You should be clear of what the consequences are." Ling Tian rubbed his chin as he sat with his legs crossed. "Of course I am clear, I have been clear from the very start. I am indeed holding someone from the Shui family captive. At the same time, the people that I killed on the battlefield also belong to the Shui family. But so what about that? The feeling of killing them is about as wonderful as slicing up watermelons. Killing them is no different from killing anyone else." "You killed my Shui family members?" Shui Qianru became nervous. "Who did you kill? How many did you kill?" "Don't worry, I didn't kill your beloved brother, Shui Qianhuan. I didn't kill too many of them, just a dozen or so." Ling Tian shook his head in disappointment. However, they were far too weak and there wasn't any thrill at all. "You, young noble Ling, is trustworthy indeed. I have finally seen your true appearance." Shui Qianru's eyes narrowed to a slit. "Ling Tian, do you know that you have offended the Shui family greatly? Wait for the bloody revenge of our Shui family. Facing our enemies, we never show any mercy. There hasn't been an exception in 1,000 years, and your Ling family wouldn't be the first one either. Just a dozen? There weren't many who came to the Heavenly Star continent in the first place." Shui Qianru was angered to the point she began to shiver. "I'm scared. I'm really scared," Ling Tian said with a playful tone and shrugged his shoulders. "I am afraid to the point I'm trembling." Shui Qianru let out a helpless sigh. If Ling Tian was really afraid of her threats, he wouldn't hold her captive. Those words of hers certainly wouldn't have any effect. In this period of time where she was held captive, Shui Qianru constantly wondered about what kind of a person Ling Tian was. To say that he was a low-profile individual, he was indeed more low-profile than anyone else. With his unrivaled talent and exceptional martial arts, he was actually willing to have the title of #1 Silk Pants for over 10 years. To say he was a careful individual, it was indeed the truth as well. He was far too careful indeed. With his current strength, there was no longer a need for him to be so careful. To say that he was arrogant, there was probably no one more arrogant than him. Of the two most powerful families in the world today, he had offended them both. He killed the elders of the Yu family without any hesitation, and the experts of the Shui family were like ants in his eyes. Even the little princess of the Shui family was held captive by him. Even though the process of her being held captive was pretty complicated. This fellow was indeed a reckless individual. Chapter 346, Condition of Release. The 2,000-year-old families aside, he was originally enemies with the Yang family already, enemies who wouldn't rest unless in death. Recently, he had another blood feud with the Ximen family as well. At the same time, he was trying to plot against the Nangong family and keeping his guard up against the Zhou family. Of the 8 great families of the Heavenly Star continent, he had offended 4 families in one go, and this didn't include the #1 financial magnate, the Zhou family. Now, he had also offended the Shui family. If it was anyone else who had so many enemies, he probably would have suffered a miserable death already, but Ling Tian was still able to lead a carefree life. Was he crazy? With so many enemies and the mere strength of his nouveau riche Ling family, he was actually able to remain indifferent. He was actually able to gain the upper hand against his many enemies. Just how did he do that? Was this something a human could accomplish? After letting out a sigh, Shui Qianru gathered her thoughts back. Young noble Ling's thoughts are as deep as a ravine, and this little girl shall not attempt to make a fool out of myself. Can I ask young noble Ling just when you intend to let us out? I hope young noble Ling can give me a clear date. That would depend on yourself, Ling Tian chuckled. What are you going to do for me to let you out? Shui Qianru's gaze lit up immediately. Ling Tian's words indicated that it wasn't impossible for her to be set free and that Ling Tian didn't have the intention of holding her captive for life. The only problem was whether or not she could offer Ling Tian something that he couldn't resist. Realizing this, Shui Qianru fell into deep contemplation. She didn't have the confidence that she would be able to offer Ling Tian something irresistible. After all, her present resources were far too limited. Right, I need to remind Ms. Shui about something, Ling Tian said with a smile. You don't need to attempt to seduce me. Although all heroes will find it difficult to disregard a beauty, while this young noble is a hero, I am also a gentleman. I will definitely not succumb to the skirts of a lady. Furthermore, this young noble's standards are very high and there is no need to make a fool of yourself with ordinary makeup. Shui Qianru immediately gnashed her teeth in anger. What a despicable individual. Bearing with her injuries that were yet to be healed, she dolled up herself meticulously for a full 3 days. For what? So that she could awe Ling Tian with her beauty when he saw her. No matter how beautiful the ladies around you are, I am sure that I am not the lesser of any of them. At the very least, you should feel some pity towards a lady, right? Shui Qianru was betting on that fact for her to give out her conditions and possibly form an alliance with Ling Tian. It would be best if both their families could reach a win-win outcome with everyone happy. Shui Qianru had even considered what Ling Tian would say, what reaction he would have, and how she should respond to him. She had already made many possible conjectures but never expected Ling Tian to render her preparations completely useless with just a few words. Furthermore, Ling Tian had also shattered her confidence. Unbearable. I'm really flirting with a blind man. Shui Qianru hatefully retorted, I've chosen the wrong image to show this time. She was irritated over having wasted her time dolling up, and this immediately included that unromantic and grass man in front of her. Ling Tian scratched his head a little in embarrassment, before smiling and replying, actually, Miss Shui is mistaken. I, Ling Tian, can definitely see that you're flirting. It's just that, while you're definitely better than all the ladies in Smoky Thea Tower, your expression has somewhat of a hint of killing intent. This would probably scare away everyone that you look at. Let's not even mention having a charming and gentle look. This sentence angered Shui Qianru so much that her old injuries flared up, causing her to vomit out blood. Ling Tian, you're good to actually compare my beauty with courtesans. How vicious can you be? Alright. Shui Qianru knew deep in her heart that she was not Ling Tian's match when it came to shooting off her mouth, and could only lower her face in defeat. Young noble Ling has such a sharp tongue. This lady here will admit her defeat. But what exactly do you want? Please state all your conditions. What I can promise you, this lady here will not shirk from it, but if I really can't do as you say, then I can only accept my fate of being a guest here for eternity. Please don't play hard to get with me anymore. Ling Tian smiled at that. Miss, you're indeed decisive. Then Ling Tian here will be direct as well. I don't have any long-lasting hatred with you and the Shui family, and while I feel that whatever Miss Shui has done was overboard, in your eyes, the same applies to whatever I've done. However, if we were to exchange roles, I believe that we would both be capable of worse things. Don't you agree, Miss Shui? Shui Qianru thought for a moment before replying with a dazzling smile. That's right, your words make sense. However, what I want to hear is your next sentence. Good, then since already have this consensus, and that I have also kept Miss Shui trapped in here for so long, this will be a pickle for me to solve. Ling Tian's face looked quite uncomfortable. After all, even though you might be married off one day, but as of now, you're still the untainted princess of the Shui family. If I were to release you, and you go back and leak even a sentence, then the entire water of heavenly wind would know that I've laid my hands on you. Regardless of my motive at that time or how well I treated you since, they would still seek me out for revenge. Isn't that right, Miss Shui? That's right. Since the truth was as such, Shui Qianru saw no reason to hide it. If she tried to do so, then there wouldn't be any point. The second point is that even the Yu family has been involved. Ling Tian's expression looked as though he wanted to cry. That time, I was so concerned over your survival that I didn't notice and killed the two Yu family elders. A dead man can't be brought back to life, so as long as Miss Shui goes out and proclaims it a little, I believe even the Yu family would come seeking revenge. Both the Yu family as well as the Shui family are the same, they're all hegemons that I can't afford to provoke. And there's still Yenner who will be angry with me. What nonsense is this? Shui Qianru couldn't help but retort. That time, the Yu family were obviously running away, but you mercilessly went after them to ensure that they died. This has nothing to do with saving me, don't try to be hypocritical and blame it on trying to save me. There's always been the blood of both you and Shui family on your hands, so don't try to twist the facts. Ling Tian laughed at her outburst. This young lady here, your joke is a little too cold. My feelings for Yu Bingyan are almost known throughout the world. If not for Miss Shui, then I would have long ago invited the two elders back to my house to properly attend to them. After all, they're Yanner's clansmen. But because of you, I had to send them over to King Yama instead. While I didn't intend to kill them, it's true that they died for me. In the end, it was because of you, Miss Shui. You can't just shirk responsibility just like that. HMPH. Shui Qianru snorted coldly. Right now, Ling Tian's tone was a little out of sorts, making her feel uncomfortable. The third point is that in the battle to protect my father, I killed many of your family's experts. Now this is a great blood feud. Ling Tian sighed out loud. I'm actually a benevolent person by nature, even avoiding the ants when I sweep the floor. To have killed so rampantly, this really is a sin among sins. Shui Qianru was stunned beyond words. This was bringing shamelessness to a whole new level. To say such words and not even be a little bashful. She really wanted to kneel down in respect. The last matter is regarding Miss Shui staying here. While I can protect my secrets now, but once Miss Shui gets out, your mouth belongs to yourself, and thus I can't stop you from saying anything. Don't you agree? Ling Tian looked more and more depressed by the minute. Don't even mention about an oath or something, that's for silly people. I'll never buy it. Anyhow, how can you actually guarantee your silence? And furthermore, if I release you, what benefits do I gain? Hey eyes, so many points to consider. While I aspire to be a hero, I'm after all still an ordinary mortal. Since things have reached such a stage, I can only beg for forgiveness from you. Once this fourth statement had been spoken, Shui Qianru was shaken. Of course, she could guarantee her silence, but how could she prove it to Ling Tian? And that jerk even said it clearly that he wouldn't believe in oaths. How could someone like him exist? Shui Qianru wanted to hug her head and scream out. She was left without a choice. At this point, Deer, who was originally silenced with a look from Ling Tian, suddenly came forward, whispering something to Shui Qianru. This was followed by Shui Qianru's eyes lighting up, as well as a light blush appearing on her cheeks. We're all direct people, and thus little sister also has no way to convince you. But I have a makeshift solution. From her bosom, she withdrew a piece of jade, saying, this jade pendant is something that has never left my side, a pledge of love that my mother once gave to me. This is the heirloom of our Shui family, the Heaven's Heart Jade. My mother mentioned this before, that whoever I give this to, will be my husband in the future. This concerns my lifelong happiness, so does young noble Ling think that this is good enough to serve as a promise? Ling Tian accepted it and felt a cold wave travel through his hand. This was actually a rare Yin-type jade. He didn't even look at it, instead placing it in his pocket, laughing out, whether I believe in it remains yet to be seen, but at least this can help me to avoid the current hot weather.
Thank you for your continued following. Please support us by subscribe to encourage our continued creation. And press the bell to notify new chapter from us. Thank you.